Right, record, right. So welcome everyone. We'll start off as we usually start off with doing our libation, and we're giving a thanks to our ancestors. So I'll go straight into it. I give thanks to our ancestors, all our ancestors that got taken from the shores of our home and dotted around the world. I give thanks for their tenacity. I give thanks for the strength for them to carry on throughout everything. And we give thanks that we have some of that strength and some of that tenacity. So we call on our ancestors and we give thanks for that. So Ashe. Ashe. Also give thanks to our heroes, the leaders that has shown us the way that we can get up, we can stand up, we can fight. We don't have to lay down and let everything that's been thrown at us, we take it. We can pave our way to move ourselves forward and onwards. So those ancestors I give thanks to. As we say, the Right Honourable Marcus Messiah Garvey is the well-known one to us, who's given us the black print for us to follow. And we must follow it now because our backs are practically against the wall now. So it's time to move forward and get going. So for the likes of Marcus Messiah Garvey and the other heroes and sheroes whose names we know, and names we don't know, and names that we will never know, I give thanks. Ashe. Ashe. I also give thanks to our ancestors, the ancestors who's helped us, all the good ancestors, has made the people who we are today, who's helped us, who's guided us, and has kept us on the path that we are on. I mean, we have strayed, but the ancestors got a way of guiding us back on. Sometimes they can be quite harsh, but they still put us back on the right path. So they're there for us. And we have to remember to ask them also for help for guidance. When we get into certain situations, just call on the ancestors and ask them to give help. And let their answers, when they do give us help or do give us guidance or messages, be as clear as this water, so that we can actually hear and understand what is actually being said to us and how it's being said, because those messages comes in many, many, many different ways and too numerous to mention. But let our minds be open to those messages when they give them to us, so that we can actually receive them well. To our ancestors, all the good ancestors, I say Ashe, I say thank you. Ashe. And I also give thanks to the Most High, the Divine One, who's given us the air that we breathe, the food that we eat, the land that we walk on, and all the other things that we see and we don't see. To the Most High, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. And quickly, is there anybody else would like to say thank you to anyone or any ancestors in their lineage? If everybody's okay, I'll take that as okay. So for all those ones unnamed, I will say, I give thanks. Ashe. Ashe. Okay. And with that, we're going to move on to our very first presentation. Our sister, she has visited us before, and also not only in a presentation mode, but also in a spectator mode, I'll say. And her name is Anne-Marie Cousins. And Anne-Marie is going to be talking about how it's like to be a counsellor stroke magistrate. So Anne-Marie, the screen is now yours, and welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you very much. I think today, thank you. When I first came to speak to you, with everyone, it was about my role or some of my experiences as a counsellor. But today, the focus will be as a magistrate, and it being Black History. I won't say the month, in Greenwich, we're trying to be different. We've worked very hard, and we're calling it Black History 365. So although everything is kicking off in October, I'm waiting for November and December now, just for the challenge to see exactly what will be hosted. But we have funded some community groups, and the idea being that they will do things beyond October as well. So it should be interesting to see what happens. A lot of things is online, so it's been quite tiring. But I thought I would do my bit. This is me supporting our local African traders, and I've bought material. I've actually got this as a head wrap, as a scarf, and a bag. So you can just imagine me, you put on anything, you just brighten up the day. So this is not my magisterial garb, just to let you know. I just decided to put it on to brighten things up. Okay, so the magistry. Why would an African Caribbean young lady want to be a magistrate? And my answer to that would be, why not? We should be reflected in all echelons of society. We shouldn't be stuck where the stereotypes put us. And also, it's another way to find out how the system works. A lot of the talks that I've sat and listening with you, and many more that you've probably gone through, will talk about things like, you know, the structural inequalities and so on. And part of that structural inequalities is if you're not reflected there. So I've been a magistrate since the year 2000. So I'm not a new magistrate, I've been going for quite a while. And I was actually sworn in at Croydon Magistrate Court sometime in February, can't remember the actual date, but in the year 2000. Before that, it took me, I would say, around 2 years to actually get to that stage. I had applied to an advert I saw, and I think it was something like for the City of London, and I live in Royal Greenwich Borough. So when that came back eventually, these processes are quite slow. When that came back, I was then told, oh, sorry, no, you've got to apply for your local area, which meant me having to now go to a local court and finding out and starting all over again with a lot of copying and pasting anyway, because at least I'd gone through it once and follow the procedures. And then that last procedure took about 18 months. So 2 years plus, it took me to finally be sworn in at Croydon Magistrates Court as a magistrate. It was a bit sad because my mother had died in January 2000, and she had always wanted me to be like a lawyer or something like that, and it just wasn't for me. It wasn't what I wanted. I always felt if I became a lawyer, I would starve because I would refuse to represent anyone that was guilty. You know what you're like when you're a sort of teenager and growing up. I had all these idealistic ideas. And so in 2000, when I was 40, was that 39, I think, something like that, to then become a magistrate, it was probably the next best thing, but my mom had crossed over to the other side then. So a magistrate, what do we do? Basically, we sit on judgment on fellow human beings. 96%, or to be honest, all crime, even the most heinous one, pass through a magistrate court. But 96% of them is what you would know as the term minor misdemeanors. They're your traffic offenses, they're minor assaults, they're maybe the drug being carrying or possession of small amounts of drugs. They're not the big category. It's not going to be murder. It's not going to be a cannabis plantation or whatever it is that this country decides is against the law. It's not going to be anything like this. But all of them pass through, and then some of them automatically go through to the Crown Court. There's also another small amount where the case can easily be dealt with at the magistrate court. They call that summarily dealing with it. It can be done at the magistrate court, but the accused have a choice. And so when they come to the magistrate court, they'll be asked, we feel it could be dealt with here, or do you want to go to Crown Court? And some of them feel that depending on what they're accused of, they might stand a better chance if they go and be judged by their peers of 12 in a Crown Court scenario. So that's really what we do. So so we sit in panel of 3. There's usually 3 magistrates, and certainly if it's a trial, because trials, we have to be so sure that somebody is guilty. So we sit in a panel of 3. Sometimes you might go and it's just a panel of 2. Usually that's for some of the minor traffic incidents. Are we gonna suspend somebody from driving for a few months because they've gone over the speed limit, or because they've hit 12+ points on their driving license through other minor points, and we might have to look, do we disqualify them? So you can sometimes get 2, but the plan is always to have 3. You might end up with 2 if somebody comes sick or we're short, because one of the things to remember about being a magistrate or a justice of the peace is another description, another name you might have heard, is that it's not a paid position. We are volunteers. It's glorified volunteering on behalf of the Lord Chancellor's Department. So I could sit for a full day, starting say from 9 o'clock, I've left my home at 9, and probably don't get home till 5, 6 o'clock. That's a full day. And my daily expense is probably, let's call it about 10, 11 pounds, depending on the mileage and so on. You literally get your expenses, and your expenses will be your mileage and something for lunch. So £7 something if it's 4 hours. If you do more than 8 hours, they'll give you £10, because maybe they'll take into account you might have to get another subsistence later on in the day. So this is nothing to do with being paid. This is strictly 100% voluntary work, but it is very serious voluntary work. So this is why sometimes I stop to explain that, because when I was talking about panels are normally set as 3, but if the worst comes to the worst and there's only 2, somebody drops out. Sorry, one moment. What's wrong? Somebody drops out, and then we go ahead. But if it's a trial, ideally it's 3 people, because it is very, very important that we're getting the views. And with just 2, it's easy to get to 50-50. When it's 3, if you don't all agree, it's easier to get to a majority. But normally we try to argue our case and try and get to a unanimous, all 3 or all 2 agreeing. But 3 is easier, because if 2 agrees and there's 1 dithering, I'm usually 1 dithering, then it's a majority decision. And I'll go back a little bit to talk about how we get to a decision. So if a case comes to us, we sit there and we listen. We listen to, let me deal with a trial, we listen to what's being told. So the prosecution side is done. Then the defense side will say their story. Each side call witnesses, the witness give their statement, and then they're cross-examined. And we could ask questions as well. We normally work through the chair so that the panel isn't looking messy if we don't know who's asking questions. And then the chair relays the question, and we're making notes, just almost like having an interview, really, if you think about it. I think all of you have had an interview at one time or another, and there's a panel of 3 or 4 people. I've had interviews where there's more than 4, and you think, hasn't anybody got anything to do? Because why do you need so many? And the idea is you talk, you ask questions, they make notes, and then a decision is made. So think of it that way. But obviously it's more serious than an interview, although a job interview is important because it's about your financial and economic status. This is about your criminal status, because as a magistrate, this is criminal. This isn't the same as, for example, in a county court, which is non-criminal, that's civil, and this is a dispute between people. So I've done a job for you, you're not happy, and you said, right, Henry, I'm going to sue you because you're being very unreasonable. That's different. This is criminal. And ultimately, the sentence could be that if you're found guilty, it could be you're either discharged, especially if you've been a person of good character beforehand, you could be discharged, it's quite possible. Or maybe the case, for whatever reason, the magistrates feel we're going to discharge this person, previous good character, it just went a little bit over the top or whatever, no serious violence involved, etc. But you could have a fine, and depending on how much you earn, or if you're unemployed, the fine is commensurate to your income. And the more you earn, the more like the higher the fine could be. So the idea is that the fine is painful. And this could, you can end up with community service, which means it's like a payback. Some community service comes with you having to do a program. If it's around violence or domestic violence or assault, physical assault and so on, there's usually like an anger management or some sort of social awareness type training. So there could be training that the probation service has to deliver. And that's about rehabilitation. So yes, we want to punish, but we might want to rehabilitate you, especially drugs and alcohol as well. They tend to have rehabilitation program, because otherwise what happens, you go out there, what's the point fining you? The first thing you've got to do is to steal to pay the fine if you were going to pay the fine. So we can take some of those considerations into account. And finally, it goes right up to, yes, we can imprison you. And if we felt that, having heard a case in the magistrate's court, that it wasn't, our powers are insufficient, we could then say, we'll transfer it to the Crown Court for them to make the appropriate sentence if we felt our power was insufficient. So one of the reasons that motivated me to become a magistrate is because obviously if you're not in the system, you don't know what it's all about. And since becoming a magistrate, I've helped to train and encourage other people to join. So I can say at least I have at least 3 successes that I know that I've started from scratch and supported and successfully to become a magistrate. And one of the things I always say to people is that it isn't about quick wins, because I can be on a panel, and I'll share a story here. I was on a panel, and I'm on a panel with 2 other colleagues, so it's 3 of us. We've heard this case, you know, fighting in a pub and bottles broken and threats made and actual physical injury from the broken bottle. And when we went into the retiring room, and when we used to leave the court, we're now going to consider the evidence and come to a decision. Is this witness, is that witness, did that witness? They were definitely there. They're identified, and plus sometimes the witnesses aren't saying it's not them, the defendant. Some of them say, well, I might have been there, but I didn't do it, or it was, you know, so that's it. So we have to prove it was definitely that person accused of that crime and they did it. We have to be very careful. So once we get to all of there and they've done it, the next thing is, well, what's the sentence going to be? And the magistrate, the sentencing guidelines are fairly prescriptive. So that's why the trials are key. And you have to be very certain, is this person guilty or not guilty? Because once you're guilty, we're very stuck by the guidelines about where we start. And there's a starting point. And at that starting point, you can ratchet it up or ratchet it down. If it ratchets up, it means it's harsher. If we go down, we can take off a good character for maybe cooperating with the police. We can go down and alleviate, reduce the severity. But with this particular case, one of my colleagues was, oh, we don't want to send this person to prison. So you know what the starting point was, don't you? Yeah, prison, but they don't want to send this person to prison. And oh, in my day, that would have been a slap on the wrist, speaking like that. And I'm sitting there and I'm trying to say, look, this was a serious offense. Okay, they didn't show us the picture, but a broken bottle was used. You can imagine the damage. It wasn't like the person that was being baited. Nothing was going on like that. The person saw this person, and due to another incident somewhere else, when they met up in a different venue, a fight erupted. So to be honest, this person was the aggressor. So, you know, so there's nothing to ratchet it down, but they came in and wanted to start with, oh, we don't want to send this person to prison. And you notice it's the we. So that means I'm supposed to agree with that. It just wasn't going to happen. Another reason, so this is why I'm saying about the reason why I wanted to be a magistrate, because at the end of the day, I know that I'm prepared to challenge. Because one of the issues is there can be, and as much as the magistrate tries to recruit people of the right character, sometimes biases will come in. It does happen. And this was clearly what was happening. And I'm thinking, how am I, because it's 2 against 1 now, so they've got the majority. And I'm thinking, how am I, little me, going to turn this around? So they all got up because they're happy with their verdict. Right, let's go in and say what the sentence is going to be. And I sat there and I said, oh, before we go in, why don't we call the clerk? Now, the clerk is a very important person in the group of people who is think of it as a team. You've got the three magistrates there, but that person that sits in the front of them and is guiding the trial and so on, and helping us to call next witnesses and things like that, that clerk is very important. That's the only legally qualified person in the courtroom on the court side, because we aren't, which is another thing I haven't said. We are not, we could be from the education environment. I was local government, health and safety at work, things like that. But used to working with legal stuff, but I'm not a lawyer. We don't have to be anything like that. It's about being judged by lay people, your peers. So people can come from any walk of life. And the idea is not to just have a panel of school teachers or a panel of local government or a panel of ex-police or a panel of, you try and mix them up. The idea is you're being judged by your peers. And so this, going back to the clerk, I said, oh, I think we should just call her in just to cross-check what we're doing is right. And I stayed seated. It was though I couldn't get up. I didn't make a conscious decision, I'm not going to get up. I just knew that the decision they'd come to, and I had failed with our deliberations, as they call it, which is when we're talking about the facts of the case and coming to a decision. I failed in the deliberations to try and convince these two to see it my way. And I was heavy, I couldn't get up. And so when I said that, the chair, yeah, confidently, yeah, let's call her in. So they agreed. And I thought, thank you, Lord, they agreed to that. And when she came in, and her status is respected, but it is our decision. So when she came in, she just said, right, where have you started from? I quickly explained, and she said, right, so where have you started from? And that meant, obviously, we had to do it correctly. We had to start from where it was. That wasn't a case that could have been ratcheted so low down that it was well out of the potential of a prison. Now, I'll leave it now for maybe when the questions come up. You can all tell me, as it's Black History Month, African History Month, what do you think the heritage of that defendant was? Okay, and this is why I use that one as an example. And that's just one of the examples of where sometimes I say, it can be quite boring at times being a magistrate for me personally, but it's time like that I think, yes, now I know why I'm doing this, because it is so important that any of us could end up in the system for whatever reason. I can be a magistrate today, I could go and drive too fast and accidentally kill somebody, and I can end up being there. There's no guarantees. But if we have people in the magistracy that are prepared to take that position seriously and really consider the facts of the case, yeah, and based on the circumstances of that case, and not our own individual prejudices or biases, because yes, I'll have prejudice and biases. If somebody came and said, oh, they're domestic violence and things like that, I have to put that aside, because it's not for me to prejudge. I have to go on the facts of the case. And it's quite possible domestic violence, was this person aggravated? Was it self-defense? You have to look at these things and be fair and reasonable about them. And that really and truly is what you want. We don't, as a magistrate, we don't know who is going to come to the court. So the policing stuff is done separately. The Crown Prosecution Service's input that's all done separately. So when I turn up to court, typically I sit on a Tuesday. When I turn up, I don't know what I'm going to get. So it's when you get there. So I'm meant to be fresh-faced, looking at that defendant who is accused of this crime, and considering the facts of the case, do we come to a decision that they did it or not? And that's what we do. And I think the representation, I'm not one of these people that think you have to be a chair of a panel either, because for me, it is so important that I'm there focusing on the issues of that specific case and not being distracted by the processes and the structures, because that's what the chair is doing, or what comes next, and you're distracted. So the two wingers sitting either side of the chair are crucial. And so those are very important positions. I don't know if I should stop at this stage and see if anyone want to ask questions, and I don't know the timing, Auntie Jean. So is that okay?
Yes, that's okay. I mean, if
Yes.
anybody's got any questions to move forward.
No questions at all. No questions.
Okay. Do you know, you said you're a magistrate. Is it 1 day a week?
No, the requirement is that you sit for 36 sittings. Now, 1 day equals 2 sittings. So if you look at it at about 18 or so days a year, when you think there is 12 months in a year, really, if you sat 1 or 2 days a month, you would do it. But most people will do a little bit more than that. As a result of COVID, I didn't sit from March until it resumed in September. And that's because most magistrates just hadn't sat at all. And there was very little going on, and they had a few people doing remote, hearing, but very, very few. They just had a handful of people dealing with the most serious. And so having got back, we're dealing with cases from early 2019. So, a couple of cases, we just said the Crown Prosecution Service was asking for more time. And we looked at it and said, but it's a year already. So we said, no, we're not going to adjourn. We know what was coming next. We're not going to adjourn, which meant that the accused walked. But, another thing that we have to live by is that justice delayed is justice denied. Yeah, you understand? Justice delayed. So if you were delaying and somebody's case for over a year, unless there are logical reasons, obviously your big murder ones, and it's a process. But when nothing has happened for a year, and when everybody is in court, somebody's jumping up wanting more time, you're thinking, well, what have you been doing all this time, having a picnic? So I was like, no, I must admit, I tend to be one of the ones, I'm a little bit harsh. And that's because I think that the CPS should get their act in order a bit more, and some of the delays shouldn't have to be. So I tend to be a little bit on the harsh side. And so all I need is one more magistrate to agree with me, and we would have no, we're not going to adjourn. And then if the Crown doesn't have evidence, then there's no case. And then we say to the person, okay, you're free to go by, next case.
Okay.
So you can see those are the bits I like, that's why I laugh. But it is, as I said, it is very, very serious, and it's fun. Sometimes it can be fun, not in a negative way, but sometimes it really is quite funny. Some of the defendants will make you laugh. You have to be serious, you have to try and be dignified. But when we go in the retiring room, sometimes we laugh and say, oh, this and that happened, and oh, it made me laugh. I nearly couldn't hold myself. So it's not all serious and mundane, but it's just that when you're in the court, there is that sense of respectability. And I don't know if any of you ever gone into a court and you're probably feeling a bit nervous, and you look around and you think, you don't say, oh, miserable bunch, but, yeah. But that's because we have to show that we are being focused, and we're not trying to be, biased or anything like that. You're sort of trying to demonstrate that.
Yeah. And there's a question that's been asked, is how many Africans are actually represented in the magistrate system in London?
Well, I don't know if the person asking that came in late. I did say that I'm wearing my my Kelly for Black History. Not that you can't go to court looking like this; they wouldn't allow it. But it's the percentage. I'm not too sure, to be honest. It's something we can probably find out, but it would be less than 20%. So when you say African, I wouldn't know the
African stroke Caribbean, I believe.
Yes, and Asian and so on, and European. So there is definitely, when I started, I used to be focused at a particular court, and when I started, it was about only 7%. And over the years, it went up to about 12, 10, 11. So it's a moving figure, because people leave and people retire. You can be a magistrate until, at the moment, you're 70. And what used to happen in the past, because I was saying to you that it's a voluntary position, This is why it was typically a lot of well, not even middle age, older, over your 60s, because they're retired,
Right.
middle class, and typically Caucasian males. And I must admit, and I was on part of the panel to do that. I was with them for 9 years of the number of years I've sat. I was on the advisory panel helping to recruit, which was where some of the personal people that I got in, I did that separately. And it's good to even have diversity there, because once again, on the interview panels, for people to get in. So there is an improvement, but I couldn't swear, but I think it's around the 20% as a general for the diversity input. It's below, obviously, the London average. The London.
There is a couple of questions. Have you ever sat on an all black panel of judges?
Of magistrates, we're magistrates,
Okay.
all black. I can think maybe bar one. I've been in a courtroom where even the clerk is a black clerk, the Crown, the CPS's advocate, the prosecutor is black, and then the defense solicitor is black. So I have nearly been in a black court, but I will just hold back just in case one of the panel members might have been Caucasian.
Okay.
But I mean, certainly it's not impossible. It does happen.
Okay.
Not the norm, but not the norm. But if you think, I have been sitting for over 20 years now, so it's got to happen at least once.
So the statistic is it's 10% of what they call BAME.
Is it 10?
10%.
That's low.
Age over 50 and 5% age under 40. So it's incredibly low.
Ones. Yeah, the younger ones are the harder one because of people working. Yeah.
But I was really pleased that you said that we need to get out there and stand in that place and be there to represent our people. You know, definitely. It's one thing to say, I don't want to connect with Babylon system, but actually when we step in there, we're supporting our people from the inside.
Let me tell you, whether if you don't, fact is, Babylon system, who are they hauling through the system?
Absolutely.
And, just being there, I learned so much. And then you're able to, I must admit, a lot of people were horrified when I told them it's not a paid position. So a lot of them ran the opposite direction, because obviously they're not going to do it, because it's hard work and it's your time. And if you're not in an organization that will support you, that's why we have a lot of local authority people. That's where we get a lot of our black representation from, the local authorities, because the local authorities tend to have that public service. I think a lot of them probably dropped to 10 days. It used to be 18 days. They might have gone down a bit, and they would give you that. And then the rest of it, you do from your own holiday resources. So, but it is important. There's no point saying you're not going to engage. The fact is, whether you want to or not, you're engaged. It's your next door neighbor, your relatives down the road, the young people that's dragged through the system. And as I said, although I can't prevent them getting to the door of the court, once they're there, I can do my bit to say, let me try and listen to this case. Let me make sure that I understand why you got here. And let me do my bit to help my two colleagues to come to a reasonable decision and sanction. But, at the end of the day, there are certain things, if you think about it, Royston, if you're carrying a knife, where does that start from? The starting point is prison. Now, if you look at the crimes, some of them are ratcheted up, and that's in the guidelines. That is the sentencing guidelines. Starting point, are you carrying? You don't have to be playing with it or doing anything. And then we have to decide and think, well, I'll give you another example with this. I also sit with judges on appeals, and I tend to sit at Belmarsh for that. And so maybe 2-3 times a year if you get a chance. And a lot of magistrates want to do the appeals because the appeals are great. You're sitting with a judge. And apparently when you're sitting with the judge, you're a judge. I just keep reminding them, I ain't paid. Yeah, so you know what I'm saying? I'm just here to make sure this person, because the judges don't deal with magistrates court, but when you appeal, you have to appeal to the magistrates court. And so you need a couple of magistrates to sit with this judge. So once again, it's a panel of 3. And the judges do have to refer to us because they don't deal with magistrates cases. And sometimes they refer back to us, oh, what's this about? What would you normally do? So we do have a role definitely to play. And there was this case, and I felt so awful in the pit of my stomach. This youth with a knife, going to college, all this sort of thing. The youth disclosed the fact. The youth wasn't being searched. The youth disclosed the fact he had a knife, and that youth was sent to prison. I felt so sick to the pit of my stomach. And I haven't seen the individual. Oh, I asked you all a question. You need to answer it again. Once again, Black History Month. Let's guess. Oh, I wonder, was it a black youth?
I think it might have been.
Oh, I wonder. Maybe. Yeah. So exactly. And you know, you're going to court and you see this youth in there, and you know the judge. We spoke to the judge, and I said to the judge, "I'm really surprised that this resulted in an imprisonment." And you know, that judge listened to me. The judge, the other magistrate that was with me was agreeing with me as well that it seemed unduly harsh. So we start using the language as well. Patricia knows me, so she knows every now and then when I switch and I try to pretend I'm a Jamaican, you know. So you start to use the language, and they agreed, and we quashed it. So we listened, the appeal, we allowed the appeal, and that guy at the end of it was free to go. That was too harsh. Young man, he was in college, not, oh, I'm about to start college, because it's amazing how many people all of a sudden they're in court and they've got a course to start the following week. This guy is in college. He's not going to start. He's in college. He's doing very well. His reports are there, and they stuck this young man. The man was not being searched. This young man, he was not being searched. He gave himself up. If he had just stood there with his friend and shut up, he wasn't going to be searched. No one would have known he had the knife. And for doing that, he was then sent to prison. So that's another place where, in sitting on an appeal this time from an awful travesty of decision, I would say, this youth was able to get off, and, you know, God bless him. I hope he went on and excelled, because obviously we don't know who they are. I could never remember. We're not allowed to say names because obviously there is that confidentiality, even if I did know. But sometimes I do wonder and just hope that they've learned from that and that they've gone on to be something fantastic in their lives.
That's absolutely brilliant, that the fact that you was there at that time to help with that decision. Somebody also asked, what's the qualification requirements for volunteering?
Right. You know the video you played at the beginning?
Yeah.
I laughed when the person said about, oh, you would think to be a minister that basic mathematics is required or something like that, because they couldn't understand the infectious, the COVID data. And it's the same for being a magistrate. There is no, I've just put in the chat, the government website. You can go there, look at things. Nobody have to join immediately. I will be here through Auntie Jean or Patricia if anybody wants my contact. So you to contact me. That isn't a problem if you're seriously considering it. All that is required is that you are able. So it's about skills, not qualification. So the fact that you're a lawyer or anything like that goes out the window. It's what's your judgment abilities? Can you read and get to grasp with paperwork very quickly? Can you listen and hear and come to a decision? So for example, if you are interviewed, one of the things you would be given is little sentences about a case. And there's no point saying there isn't enough information, because from those little snippets of information, they would want you to rate them or rank them or discuss them, because they want to see how your thought processes work. It's quite okay to actually turn around and say, look, you know what, I mentioned about domestic violence, for example. If your thing is, you felt you might be biased because somebody's domestic violence, the fact that you're able to mention that already demonstrates that you are sophisticated enough or sensible enough to know not to let that hamper your judgment. If you can turn around and admit to the fact that we all have biases, but at the end of the day, I'm going to deal with that case depending on those circumstances and come to the relevant decision for that case and not bring in something else. And sometimes that does happen, even for the magistrates that are there. Sometimes we do sit down and yaga about things and we say, come on, let's focus on this case. That has nothing to do with this case. Afterwards, yes, but let's focus on this case so that we're not unintentionally bringing in biases.
I mean, yeah, that's easily done. A question also is a cut-off point, is it 65?
No, up to, they're actually reviewing that. There's consultation on whether or not they should allow magistrates to sit until 80. At this rate, the coffin will be there on the bench with us. But at the moment, it's 70. There's an automatic cutoff at 70. A lot of people come in at 60. But as Royston has just done, thank you for that, Royston, and found the figures. There is actually a demand for people below 40. And few years back, they opened it up to 18-year-old upwards. Okay. I personally think 18-year-old is a bit young, but we have had one. They didn't stay because they were actually studying law and had joined to help themselves, and then they left. But that's not to say that if there's some keyed up young people out there that are wanting to do that why not? You don't have to be working if you're unemployed. That all your employment status is irrelevant. It's all about, do you have the time to 1 or 2 days a month sit on cases that are there to judge your peers? Do you have the ability to go through and focus on the facts of the case? What's the issue here? What's really going on here? And forget all the flowery stuff and the story from, 100 years ago, I met my wife and today I killed her. No, we want to know what happened, in the minutes and seconds leading up to that, where we were taking drugs, we were arguing. She stabbed me first. I meant to push an accident, whatever the story is, you look at it and you think, on the basis of what you're being told, does that make sense? Would the ordinary man on the street or woman on the street, would they come to that conclusion that it was self-defense or whatever the defense is that they're trying to put? We've got another question here. Is what do you say about over-criminalization of the Africans in the system, and by whose pale male and stale white man magistrate? Somebody's trying to get me into trouble. Like, stop the recording. well, just ignore the last bit, but just answer the last bit. But we know there's a problem, and I sort of touched on it when I came back, sort of rhetorically to Royston, saying, why, or just all of you generally, when I'm saying, I wonder, what the ethnicity of this person is in some of the cases that I'm alluding to that. And when I mention about knife crimes, and automatically who are being mainly, when I'm dealing with knife crime, most of the times it's young Black youth. It's our males and not females. I don't think I've ever had one female. I can't recall, but just in case, may have done one, but I can't recall. But I can certainly recall a number of Black males. Yes, I'm not saying that young white males don't fight as well. But when it comes to carrying a knife, funny enough, I think that tends to be burglary for something like that. When it comes to carrying a knife, it's that. And as I said, it's because of COVID, I've not been in court for a few months. So this year I'll see a lot less. And it's almost as if to say the punishment has been ratcheted up for that. The punishment starts at a higher bar. I can't consider a fine. I can't consider community. I've got to consider, that's where it starts, imprisonment. And then, depending on the circumstances, I can ratchet it down a bit or ratchet it up, depending on this. So the person wasn't aggravating the situation. The person handed over the knife, they disclosed it, they weren't being searched, they weren't guilty. You know what I'm saying? All of that brings it down. So you see, but this is what we're dealing with. And so my role there is to say, right, this is what I've got to deal with. Let's look at it and look at what's really happening here. And how am I going to be able to convince my other two, because it's not just me alone, it's 3 panel members. So how am I going to convince them one way or the other? And there'll be some cases where I'm sorry, I won't even bother try because it is so blatantly obvious that this has gone too far. This is serious crime, whatever. So I have to admit that some of them are, way past where I can do anything. And in actual fact, most of those pass through the magistrate court and go straight to Crown Court because they're more serious.
But, here's a question. So I had a personal situation where I got caught for speeding. They changed the speed limit from 50 down to 40, and I hadn't checked that, and I had to go to court because I was eligible for a ban in driving, so I had to go to court. And I got, and at the time, I was in a position of supporting my auntie to get to her day center 3 days a week. And she couldn't have got there without my support.
So that saved you.
So I put a letter in on that basis. But then because of the work that I do, I got my chair of trustees to put a letter in saying I'm doing these community trainings, and I do over 10,000 miles a year doing the community training. I was shocked that the magistrates did not care one iota about my ailing auntie and the support I gave her. I only got off because of the community work that I was doing.
Wow.
And when I say I got off, I got fined, which I was
But
happy
not
with the
banned.
fine,
Yeah,
but not banned.
banned.
But yeah, but only interested in the community work that I was doing. They didn't give a toot about my ailing auntie and the support I was trying to give her.
Maybe because did you provide any evidence? Because you said you did a letter.
I did. I got both letters from in supporting both situations.
Okay, well, you didn't have me, but it does. You know what? In the round of it, you got what you wanted, which was not be banned. You didn't want to.
But that was in Bristol, right? That wasn't in London, but still.
Yeah, but but you got what you wanted in the end. So thankfully for that. But we do actually consider maybe they thought, well, if you don't live with the aunt, it really does depend.
But I did at the time. I was there as part of the support system for her.
Oh, okay.
So
bad luck. Yeah, but not to worry, you got it in the end.
I know, but and I just thought, look how much they actually care about us and our well-being and our welfare.
But that is a legitimate reason, and we have. I mean, I can only speak from my experience. We do look at that because if you're a totter, so that means you hit 12 points on your driving license. You come into court because you risk being disqualified. We never just disqualify you. And you have an opportunity to try and give reasons why you shouldn't be disqualified. So that's what Royston had done. But part of it is to look at if somebody else, because the idea about punishment, it should punish you, not if you are, say if you're a carer, you've got to take somebody to the hospital, there's no other way of doing it. I don't know if they probably decided that if you call the ambulance or use the cab because it wasn't too often, but certainly people who have to do it on a weekly basis, it's a heavy use. We wouldn't expect you to be having to pay that frequency. But I don't know what the reasons were, but we can and we do, and certainly I have taken family needs into account. But in the end, to be honest, Royston, you got what you wanted.
That's good to know. We have a question from Glenroy. Glenroy? You'd like to unmute yourself? Thank you. We can't hear you.
It's not unmuted. Glenroy?
He's unmuted. Can we hear you now?
It is unmuted, but
we can't seem to hear the... You might need to test your speaker, Glenroy.
Or plug it in.
Do a test on you. Go to your mic and test your speaker.
Can you type it in?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Ken has basically said there's a reason why Ken I said the reason why that is so few women have been caught with knives is because probably it's only very few of them been searched. Could that be?
Yeah. I mean, I'm only at the actual court phase, so yeah, they're not getting that far for whatever reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Royston, I see.
I know. It's all right. It's all right.
But yes, if I don't know, we there's a program as well that they do called Magistrates in the Community, where they will go into schools and things like that. So, you know, there are programs to try and encourage and promote the work of a magistrate. But I think for a lot of people, and, you know, African heritage, I'm thinking of in particular, I don't know whether it's fear and, you know, because obviously you're going to be in the minority, and I don't know whether it's, you know, you're feeling uncomfortable but you do need that confidence. Anybody that you know that can hold a conversation or is prepared to say, no, this is the point I'm trying to get across. Because sometimes you do have to do that. When we're sitting down and I have to say, look, I'm sorry, I have had to turn around and say, I'm not here for my looks, you know.
Glenroy, just a sec to cut in quickly. Glenroy, are you able to, can we hear you now? No, we still can't hear you.
Can you type your question, Glenroy, please?
Very slowly.
Oh, we can hear you.
We can hear you now.
We can hear you.
Yes.
Well, that will save a bit of effort. No,
Okay.
I wanted to ask if you sat on a jury prior to becoming a magistrate, because I understand that once you are a magistrate.
Not as you know, I've never ever. Do you know? I have been called to sit on a jury, but I've never done it, because the first time I started my very first job, this was before I became a magistrate, and the company had sent me away for training, so I couldn't do it, and they wrote a letter. The second time was when I was having my first child, and I was at home so bored, and I said, oh, I would love to come in, but I'm a mother, I am breastfeeding. They wrote me a letter, told me to get lost. You don't want me to come in. I said, no, it's all right, stay away. So, and I've never been called since. I've never sat on a jury.
My follow-up question is, obviously, you've got the experience of the other. So I was going to ask you, which do you think is not better, but more fairer? Because I think that it becomes very subjective with just 3 people, whereas, I don't know, is it 12 or whatever, might give you a higher proportion of getting your point across. I don't know whether you believe one is better than the other.
You mean getting my point across when we have to deliberate and decide the case?
No, in the sense of the judicial process, do you think a jury service or a magistrate is fairer? I mean, obviously we do need a magistrate. The numbers will just get appallingly high. But surely, in the sense of balance, which, as you say, some people might come to a magistrate court and say, no, I want to go to Crown.
To be honest, I think it depends on the case, because with a jury, I think a lot of people feel that they don't want 3 fuddy-duddies, because they tend to be old fogies, isn't it? Sitting, I mean, I'm 60 next birthday, so I'm actually older. So we're all old people, and a lot of people don't want that. They want to go because you get a mixed panel, and it's 12 people. And I think if there's any room for doubt in your case, because one of the things with a criminal, because it's criminal law we're dealing with, it's beyond reasonable. So without a doubt, there must be, if you've got a doubt, then you cannot say the person is guilty. And we know we've sat on cases where we felt the person might have been guilty, but you know what? Sufficient doubt was cast. And once you've got a doubt, you can't. So if you can do that among a bigger number of people, which are less hardened because they're hearing less cases, you probably have a better chance. So I think it really depends on the case. Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Anyone thinking of becoming a magistrate?
Well, one question here is, if you're a magistrate and an entrepreneur, do they look favorably on your application for drinks license or licenses?
Is that you again, Royston? No.
Old people's homes.
No, that's that. You know, is this? That's a night. let me. That's a. We don't do. No, let me tell you something. I am not saying that maybe there are underhanded, you know, preferential treatment going on, but obviously that wouldn't work for me. It's not going to work for you. Yeah. Because really they shouldn't be doing that. So, but I can't swear on my heart and say no way, Jose, is there ever any underhanded treatment, but that should not be the case. I, for example, with Auntie Jean, Royston, Patricia, anyone that I know, just seeing your name isn't sufficient. Even you now, Glenroy, because we've spoken, I've seen you, and if I recognize you and you ended up in front of me, even if I didn't recognize you, because you've only got Glenroy, so I can't see the rest. There's more than one Glenroy in the world, say. If you ended up in front of me and I thought, oh my God, I know, you know, this is, I would have to disclose it. We've had a magistrate stand up and said, sorry, that's my postman. And then we're determined and say, well, what do you and your postman get up to? Because, you know, but he didn't feel comfortable. That was his postman. He knew the postman. He didn't want to sit on the case. And I have had a couple of cases. One of them I had when I used to work for the council. And I didn't even know the person, but just seeing the person's face and knowing the person turned up wearing their clothing, the uniform for the department that they worked in. And so I said no, because to be honest, I don't want to know the person's business because I just didn't want to sit on their case. And so I said no, and the person wasn't happy because it was a family case that was dragging on forever. And he probably wanted it over and done with. Unfortunately, because of me, it had to be postponed because I just wasn't comfortable to sit on, you know, you're working there. I didn't want him to see me in work. And then he feels uncomfortable wondering, have I spoken, although you're bound to confidentiality. So I can't go sprouting people's names. And any examples I'm giving you, I can't say, oh, such and such from such and such. Yeah, because so by keeping everything anonymous, you can then talk about it. Otherwise, you know, you just can't talk otherwise. So you can imagine, you know somebody, how do you face them when you bump into them in work, although we didn't work in the same department?
It'd be very awkward. It'd be very awkward. Last two questions. Was it, can you stand if you've got a conviction?
It depends. If it's minor, but you know, don't go killing anyone and thinking that it would have to be very minor. And we have had magistrates that, to be honest, it's usually simple traffic ones. As long as you don't have more than 9 points, I think is on your license.
Okay. And how do you begin the journey of becoming a magistrate?
Oh, that's somebody. Yeah, I did cover that in the beginning, but
also you've got somebody you've influenced, so they're going to be looking into becoming a magistrate.
To be honest, just have the desire. I did cover that at the beginning. Just have the desire. And I'll put the link, I did put the link in the chat, didn't I?
Yeah. And one last quick question from Marlene.
Sorry, my sister, you read my question. I said, how did Anne-Marie herself, how did you begin your...
Okay. Just from having that interest, why a magistrate? To be honest, I didn't know that it was a voluntary or anything like that. I didn't know. I think I was just interested in wanting to, you know, to just understand, you know, why, you know, how the legal system work and why we seem to fare so badly. You hear the statistics, you know, and I just wanted to see it for myself. And I can assure you that there's a diversity of people that goes through. It's not full. You know, I could go in on a day and I don't see one Black, African or Caribbean defendant. So it's a mixture of people, but it's just that when it comes to whatever our, you know, representative of ourselves, our African and Caribbean people are there for, unfortunately, it varies. It can be domestic violence, it can be knife crime, there is drugs. I mean, to be honest, on a personal note, the cannabis thing, please just legalize it and let's get that one out the way, so that, you know, but unfortunately for here, it still is an issue. And, you know, some people, it's such a small quantity. It's obviously personal use, it's a small quantity, they're not supplying, but you know, they throw them in front of us. But it's, thankfully, it's, to be honest, it's not so many these days of that sort of thing.
Anne-Marie, thank you so
Okay.
much. Thank you. Oh,
Anne-Marie,
all right, quickly, Marlene.
No. Come on,
No,
roll
I
on.
did mention Marlene beforehand.
But she asked the question.
No, it wasn't. It was somebody else who answered the question. Marlene didn't get in. Quickly, Marlene.
yeah, what I wanted to say, do you ever get frustrated, similar to being a juror, where you don't agree with what the other three say, and then you've got to agree because that's how they work it?
Yeah,
and it's set against us.
Yes, I don't have to agree. I don't have to agree, but if I am in, it's a good question. You're getting some thumbs up for that, Marlene, in case you can't see. But I don't have to agree, but they will go through on a majority decision. So it's a panel of 3. If 2 agrees, and I'm the only one that don't, it can go through. So I stand my ground. If I don't believe somebody is guilty of something, I stand my ground, because when I make up my mind that you're not guilty, or you should get a certain sentence, a lower sentence versus a higher sentence, say, I've got my reasons for it, because I've listened to the case. I've got my reasons for it. I've taken the circumstances into account. I'm not jumping to conclusions. So when I make up my mind, that's it. And I have often, and what will happen, they'll sort of get up and say, oh, so sorry. You probably heard of one where probably didn't hear one, an example I gave where the other 2 didn't agree with me, and I stood my ground. I couldn't get up. I was stuck in the seat.
Yeah.
And I managed to get that one overturned by calling in the clerk, who is the legally qualified person who got us to start where we should start.
Okay.
Yeah?
Thank you so much.
All right, I could say a lot more, but I'll leave it.
I know you can't. You've got the time.
Yeah.
We've got to move on.
Yeah.
Anne-Marie, thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
There's a whole lot of questions. Well done. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very insightful. Very insightful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
And we're going to move swiftly on to our next presentation by a brother called Ken Hines. And I think he's one of the organizers, or the main organizer of the Million Man March. So Ken Hines, welcome. The screen is now yours. Are you there, Ken?
Here I am, live and direct.
Hi, welcome.
Yes, just fresh back from the gym. So you're lucky that I'm grounded.
So you're all rosy cheek and everything now, huh?
Brother Glenroy, lovely to see you as always. You know, one of my heroes as always. So I'll put it out there. So let's not get it twisted. So I've got to be mindful of my language. Yes, people, thank you for putting me on this platform again. So I love this. I love to be on something like this. I love the attention. I don't know why, but I have 6 brothers, so you know what I mean. Never got.
And you're a dancer.
There you go. And I was on stage with the Rolling Stones, so that's my favorite thing. But anyway, the Million People March. Jeez, what a summer! What a summer! I'm telling you, George Floyd, may your soul rest in peace. Yes, because he started something global. I've never really gone out for demonstration, unlike Glenroy, who you know, is very much a steward of that sort of thing. And till I saw George Floyd, and so I started just going out just to see what was happening, and I was really impressed by the number of young people in their thousands that were out there. You know, even though you had this virus going on, you had young people who were out there for the first time, peacefully having fun and just, you know, demonstrating. And I remember I was outside Downing Street, we call it Boris House, when the police decided to step up the aggression. So they went from soft top police to riot hat police. And there was thousands of young people there out for the first time, just having fun, you know, dancing, having a little laugh. But you had 1 or 2 who was throwing things at the police. But that could have been managed by either a snatch squad or people, the organizers taking better control. but nonetheless, the police decided to weaponize their horses and charge into the crowd when it was wet. And one of the police fell off of the horse, and they even blamed that onto the demonstrators when it was their recklessness that caused that.
I saw that. It was a traffic light. They charged, and there's a traffic light that knocked that police off of his horse.
Absolutely, yeah. I was there because they brought the police unconscious past me, and I managed just to restrain the other people, so because they were vexed, and rightfully so, because it was not called for, but we managed to keep the peace. So anyway, the next day, my nephew and my son went to the demo outside Downing Street, and when they came back home, my nephew had a bloodied head because he got hit with a baton and needed 3 stitches, and my son got a broken hand because when they tried to lash my nephew again, he put his hand away and it broke his hand, so he was end up in a cast. Subsequently, I decided that, you know what, and because they were talking about kettling, so I decided to go out there to safeguard young people. Now, this just happened a week or 2 before they called it the Battle of Trafalgar. The Battle of Trafalgar is when we had thousands of EDL, white man coming down. And I can remember getting a call from one of the pastors from Harringay to say, Ken, we need you to come out to help keep the peace, because we feel that there could be a major disturbance down there. So I went down, and my God, I couldn't believe what I saw. There was thousands of white people. I thought it was an England football match going on. And then when I look into Trafalgar Square, me see a little black spot of maybe 100, 200 people. So the next thing is, when I got my car, I remember coming out the car, and I took a young person with me. So when I got the car now, I see these about 200 white men run towards us, start flinging bottles and stuff. So and there's only 3, 4 of us black men there. And when we look around, we see them. So we got to run the other way. When we look to run the other way, we had about maybe 500, 600 white men running at us. So we were trapped in the middle. And the youth said to me, grab my hand and say, "Unks, we're gonna die. We're gonna die." You know. I said, listen, you know what? Me not thinking about dying. Me just thinking of protecting myself. But anyway, one of the white men ran up to me and said, "Oh, yeah, man, we're not here for you, we're here for the statue." But I'm saying, so I said to him, "What about your friends?" Right? Because we don't know which one is which. So anyway, we managed to get out of that and make our way to the Trafalgar, to the center, to the Trafalgar Square itself, only to find that these EDL started running down the black people. And it was only about 200 of us, and there was women and children. So if you've ever seen the old Indian film, right, you'll see that what they used to do, we had to circle up and put the women and children in the middle. But the police, where they usher us, they put us right underneath where the white man then could fling all kind of implements on us. You know what I mean? So, and we're trying to plead the police to let us come up to higher ground, to make it more difficult for the man them to violate us. But they didn't want to know that. They're trying to keep us in that space. So anyway, as a result of that, this is where the concept of the Million People March started. Because we said, no, never again are we gonna get caught out like this. Don't get me wrong. On that later on that day, I never, because people were on the social media calling for the man them. And I'm telling you, we saw about 1,000 men come marching down. And I'll never forget that beautiful sight. And they were just making noise, like going, hoo, 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 coming down. I said, wow, it come like the cavalry, right? And wow, you know what I mean? It was a beautiful sight. And these were the real man then. You know what I mean? Some of them had their difference, but they allowed their difference to come under one thing. So anyway, so 3 of us decided to come and decided to put together this Million People March. But from the start, it was fraught with difficulty, because it wasn't so much a difficulty from the authority, because we expect that. But what we didn't expect is that it's a difficulty come from our own kind, our own black people. You hear me? Because some of us are envious, some of us are just red eye, some of us has got no common sense. Do you understand? And what they did, you had them infiltrators coming in, and and you had other people with all emotional nonsense going on in their head. So I took people at their face value, but I've learned lessons going through. So what happened was, because I do a special privilege, I thought I could have special privilege because I sit on these different police boards, you know, the stop and search, the community monitoring network, and also a high one called the use of force. The use of force oversight group, where you have the commanders and everybody. So they know my pedigree. So I decided that what I'm going to do, I'm going to take responsibility for the march. Okay, because all too often, when you take responsibility, the police then put all the things onto you. So I put myself forward. So yeah, I'll be that man. And to my astonishment, they had a black man who was a superintendent who was supposed to be liaison with me. And I know this man from back in 2011 when I saved his bacon. Right? I tried to save his bacon when they had the riot outside Tottenham police station, because he was the top police then, the bronze, right? And I'm telling you, is responsible for the riot on that night because his indecision. Because unfortunately, you have two kind of people in. Back on the plantation, you had the man them that live in a master house, and the man them that stay in the field. Now he happened to be one of the man them that stay in the master house. Okay. So anyway, now I thought that after I did what I did with him back then, I thought he would have known that, you know, he could have a conversation with me. But unfortunately, 9 years later, I have come to realize he hasn't changed at all. Because after we had the conversation about the march, and I'm sending my risk assessment, I'm thinking, because I felt that I want to have a different kind of march, because I see people going there shouting at us, being aggressive, but I wanted to show them what a peaceful demonstration and a focused demonstration could look like. So I wanted to come up with something different. Unbeknown to me, the man then sent me a legal letter telling me, you know what, that if you put this march on, we're going to arrest you. And then he went, in fact, just a simple fact that you put it out on social media that you're doing a march means that you committed an offense already. So we could be looking to arrest your ass anyhow. Do you understand? So, and they choose to do this 7 days before the march was due on. Right? We had our own internal nonsense going on with man them putting misinformation saying, oh, you can't start the march on the carnival footprint. Now, the whole point of me, one of the major points for me doing this march is on the carnival footprint is because carnival is about emancipation, about freedom, about protest. Now, I could not understand why the organizers didn't want me to do this, and therefore was supporting the police. Even the police told me, Ken, we can't support you because we are supporting the organizers and they don't want you coming on their turf. Now, what turf? It make it sound like the youth them who are on the postcode nonsense. That's what it make it sound like, instead of us, because you see, I know, because I'm a carnivalist and I used to, for 20 years, I had my band there. So I know about carnival and the beautiful things that carnival can produce about community and togetherness. So personally, so what I felt was bad is that I knew for the last 40 years there have been the carnival organizers have been negotiating with the authorities knee on their neck, and I felt that this is the opportunity from what happened with Jaws for us to stand up and to get their knees off our neck and to renegotiate it. Because we can't even call our carnival a black carnival. We have to call it multicultural, right? Even though the carnival brings in between 60 and 90 million a year, we as the producer of carnival don't get a penny from that, right? The police get their 6 million for having 11,000 police. Kensington and Chelsea get their 6 million, right? And Westminster get their 6 million, and the Chancellor of Exchequer bank the rest. And we, as a carnival carnival participant have to go through the Arts Council to get a little piece of money and on the strict terms. And what's even worse, we can't even make money from it as one of the people that selling food or whatever, because you have to go through strong, strict terms that's put out by the council. And so therefore you have everybody else who's selling food and making money, and we can't make money for ourselves. So I felt that we could be using that to make it a Black Pound event. This is what my whole thinking was behind that. So I was determined to leave on that. So anyway, so when I get this letter saying that you're going to commit to an offence, me as a person, me done jail time already. So if I have to do more, I know nothing. You know what I mean? It don't faze me. You know what I'm saying? Because I would just create more problems there too. I would just organise. So that's how it is. So anyway, but behold, we had some solicitors and legal people who decided that they were coming to support me, and they're saying, "Ken, we'll come and support you. We're gonna write back to them and give them 24 hours to come back to drop their madness about coming arresting me, and we would and otherwise we'd take them to the High Court." You right? So the police lost their bottle. You hear what I'm saying? They lost their bottle, and they decided to dress back. But nonetheless, they're still bad losers, and they came along and tried other nonsense things. Because I've already paid for my big 40-foot lorry, right? My big sound system, right? And saying that we're gonna make a noise here, right? But what happened was, because you have infiltrators that join our inner group, they were going back and telling the carnival organizers a whole heap of effery, right? And so making out saying, "Oh, Ken's gonna come on and he's gonna go around the carnival route and all kind of foolishness." My thing was never to go on a carnival route. It was to start on a carnival footprint and go to Hyde Park, okay? And so anyway, I'm thankful for Brother Royston, because you see, Royston, me have lyrics, but Royston have bigger lyrics that the police understand, right? And so anyhow, when the police find out that I'm having this PA system, we had make it a part of our risk assessment and safety as our safety unit. So the police wrote a letter to say, because the people who was giving us the lorry and the PA system said, "Ken, they've got I must tell you before all this, they brought in that new law, because we publicized this back up in June sometime, that we were going to bring this million people march. So what, they get afraid. So what they've done, they brought in the law about the £10,000 fine and all kind of foolishness. You hear what I'm saying? This scared the people who was giving us the sound system and the lorry. And said, "Ken, we need to get a letter from the police." So when we go to the police to ask them, here the police, send back a letter saying, "You know what? Well, we can't say that we will arrest them, but we can't say we're not going to arrest them. So we may or we may not." So that scared the people off. But nonetheless, I was determined to leave from the carnival footprint. And so because they weren't there, we got an alternative mobile system. And then, so anyway, we got the mobile systems. Here what happened. So on the Sunday morning, when we're going to do the march, the police ring me up and say, "Ken, we've got the letter here from the Royal Park, an email to send to you. To give me your email address so I can send it." So we said to the police, "Well, listen, but that's strange. For the last 3-4 weeks, I've been reaching out to the Royal Park to tell them we want to put stage and do this in the park, but they never get back to me. So how come now they want to write me a letter?" I said, "You know what? Let me give you my solicitor email and you can send it to them." And I said, "By the way, they don't work on a Sunday." Right? So anyway, it's a good thing. It's a good thing we done that. Because in that letter, you want to hear the nonsense of that letter. They're trying to tell me I couldn't even come into the Hyde Park, not even with a megaphone or anything else. So when the march get to the gates of Hyde Park, the police step to us and saying, you can't bring that in. We said, what? Get in mind, move out the way. Because we had the numbers. We didn't have 1 million. That wasn't far short in my heart. So we roll into Hyde Park now. When we roll into Hyde, because I forgot to tell you, because of all the obstruction the police give to me, I decided the day before, I gave me Royston help because my letter's kind of straight. I just talk ragamuffin, right? So Royston helped soften it, and we sent it to Krista Dick and tell her that anything happened on the march, I'm holding her responsible, right? Because she's already got a letter from Stafford to saying that she must step down. So to get a next letter from my next man from Haringey, she's thinking, what go on? The only thing that could have made it worse for her is if Glenroy came on and sent her the one as well. Right? So anyway, we said it. So anyway, when we get to Hyde Park now, I had my plan B was to have a next sound system provide me with a PA system so we can set up. So we had to then bring in the system. So when I bring the system, you see the police come saying, what you guys do? Where you going with that? Have you got permission to bring that system into place? So we say, yeah. So he said, who gave you that permission? I said, the police. He said, who are the police? I said, your boss. And I gave him the boss name. And he said to me, so what's your name? I said, Ken Hines. So you see the man, the police ring up the head office now and say, whoa, we have this man here saying he got permission to bring in this sound system. And they said, what's his name? They said, oh, Ken Hines. And when he said that, you see the man just look me up and down. And then he just walk away. You know what I mean? So what them do, they send, so I see this Range Rover keep running, driving around in the park. And it had, what's her name? Jane Connors, who's the head of Stop and Search. So she won't come talk to me in the park. Me just ignore her. We have my people to flipping go and look upon. And so, yeah, so so that's what happened. So I was there, man. So I put the footprint out. I made legal history, right? To show that, you know what, you could be defiant, but you have to have the bottle and the will and prepare. If you have to do a bit of time, so what? You know what I mean? Well, for me anyway. So that's my talk. So if you want to come and challenge me.
That's wonderful. I mean, you only have one life, innit?
That's right.
You only have one life.
I'm going to live it to the fullness.
Hey. Has anybody got any questions? Somebody said you should write a book.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Let me just ask Ken. Okay, bye-bye, see you. So just saying bye-bye, the relatives are visiting. Ken, you said I've got relatives in the house and I'm with you guys. That's saying something, isn't it? So I just wanted to ask, can you keep advocating about spending time inside? Could you please tell us some more? It will certainly help me in terms of my role as a magistrate, because I've been on prison visits and I can assure you, the minute I hear those doors clank, I'm trying to scratch my way back out, and yet I'm not a prisoner. So you tell us, what's it like inside?
But look, I went in when I was 18. I did 5 years for armed robbery. Okay, and when I went in there, because I like to think back in that, this is back in the 80s, early 80s, right? Because I'm not no spring chicken. I may look it, but don't get it twisted. And anyway, when I was in there, I still went there with a lot of anger, a lot of rage. So therefore, I was just as bad in there as I was outside. So what used to happen is, I used to, whenever there was a protest, I would stand up and say, Ray, this is what the protest is all about. Boom, boom, boom. Trying to, you know, the mediator. But the screws them, the prison folks says, ringleader. So as a ringleader, they put me in isolation. But what happens is, when you're getting punishment, you hear what I'm saying? It's like punishment, your body and your mind are tuned to it. So I spent a lot of time in isolation, and it just hardened you. But what it also done, it got me the respect from the prison, and also because not many men would stand up and do what I do. And so as I said beforehand, not that I like it, because you know what? I didn't see any women in there, but I see some lookalikes. You know, and depending on how long you're doing, what does that look like? So you've got to be mindful. So personally, as I said, what I tried to do there quite clearly is about principle. I went in there for material nonsense. I put my hands up for that. But I will quite rightly go in there for principle now, right? I won't get phased. As you said, you go in there as a visitor, of course it's going to scare you. But if you were to spend 6 months or a year, it might just build your emotional resilience, which will add to your intelligence, or it may just kill you. Do you understand? So you don't know which way it's going to go. But as I said quite clearly, you know, I haven't been back for quite a number of years. But the simple fact that I did that sort of time excludes me from a lot of different places, and I understand that. But you know what? I wasn't here to be a sheep. Exactly. I was here to lead. And sometimes leaders don't always come with clean hands. Do you understand? But they come with clean hearts. And that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. Okay. So just to clarify as well, that question wasn't to necessarily, you shared a lot more than, and I respect you for that, because at the end of the day, where you start isn't necessarily where you end up, as you've shown. And we go through, you had to go through that for this, because what you're doing is tough. It isn't easy to be out there putting your neck on the line for others. And that takes me to the point where you sort of touched on it, but you didn't elaborate too much. You were saying about other, people coming in, and I always sort of think of people like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. They're very security forces, were the FBI people, basically, plants, and you were sort of touching on people coming in and spoiling things or not doing it for the right reason. So could you say what you sort of touched on it, but you didn't explain. So could you say a bit more about the shenanigans, perhaps, that you're coping with?
Like for example, I'll give an example. We got one man who has been working for 15 years for the carnival organizers. He's come in and he's quite clear because I've had meetings with the carnival organizers, and I know that they're a bunch of crooks. And to have a white man who's running my carnival, how could it happen? You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I felt aggrieved at that. And they knew, and I tell them in no certain terms, I'm not having it, right? Because not a lot of people know that. So what they've done, of course, they'd said that they don't want to support my march either over the where I'm starting from, or even over the carnival period. So people were thinking that they could score points by coming in and being mischief. So what they did, they said, oh, we're going to leave from Trafalgar Square, or we're going to leave from Notting Hill. They're not part of the carnival footprints. Where Westbourne Grove was where I left from, which is on the carnival footprint. So you had these people coming in, and others, you had other people, because don't get me wrong, I didn't know some of the people I was working with, but one of the Mandem that was part of the organizer, he had his own issues around women. And he used to just piss off enough women, right? He's caused all sorts of trauma. And because I wasn't strong enough to dash him out early enough, right? He's caused damage, but then because I haven't dashed him out, the women with their own emotional trauma said, I must be just as bad as him. Yeah. By association, do you understand? Yeah. And so they caused other kind of mischief. So you had everybody blowing up. I'm surprised it wasn't only me on the day out there demonstrating with my system. You understand? Mm-hmm. So that's to show you. But you know what? You are going to have your dissenters. But so long as you stay strong and you stay focused, I will always win true. That's what it shows me. I'm not here to be popular. I'm here to be effective.
Absolutely brilliant. We've got 3 hands up, so we go in order. Sister J Africa, then Marlene, and then the end of time. Sister J Africa, your question?
Greetings. It's more of a comment and an observation.
Okay.
What people may not realize, as Ken says, he doesn't, because I do a work alongside Ken, and he's not there to be popular. And we have to give him high credit for what he managed to pull off on that day. But what he also did, and he probably doesn't say it, he inspired a lot of young people to come on that march. Half of my family that would never have had the courage to go. He inspired one of my eldest boy who was there, and I was thinking, you know, what's going to happen here? But it's not just stop there, it's set seeds for the future. So those young people are influenced by that, and we have to give Ken a big prop for that, because there was a serious time when he was under threat of going to jail. Yeah. And I would have been there with him in the male jail as well. I would have gone. So I give thanks to you, Ken. And you know, you had many doubters, you had many obstacles. And unfortunately, we find that even from within, as you were saying, that you have those obstacles. But I just want to give you props and a thank you for you've influenced my children even more. Okay, and talking about having emotional resilience with having somebody personal to me that's just come out of prison, it can influence them and bring them to a place of slight low self-esteem. Trying to, when you do come out of prison, I know maybe Ken's character is different, but everybody's different. But people going to prison, it affects everybody around them. So that's what I wanted to say. And Ken is also supporting me there as well. So boop, boop to Ken. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Marlene?
Hi, Ken. It was great listening to you. You're an inspiration to us as a community. The way you gave the story about the horse and the situation that took place, it came over so differently on the news, because I thought it was the young people that was attacking the horse that caused the problem. So I think that need to be written, because I'm just a lay person observing things by watching the news, and that's how it came across. So if that's the way you've told it, it's so different. It makes us realize that we got to hear other sides to a lot of stories. And you must write a book. I would love to read it. I'm sure others in times, you know, years to come would love to read these stories. And for your determination and your strength. I know you said you've been in prison, but you've explained, okay, you were after the wrong things, that's why you got there, but you know, you didn't kill anyone or done anything really vile. And you know, you've seen what you can do to make a change for young people and for Black people, and your determination, and they must see something in you to have you with them, to help them to make a difference within our community that they don't understand in any way at all. And that's what I'd like to say to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the end of time?
Yes, greetings all. Thank you very much. The End Time Watchman.
Oh, the End Time, sorry.
That's all right.
I'm trying not to use my glasses. That's what it is.
Listen, I'm really, first of all, I just want to say what you guys are doing is really, really wonderful, yeah? And I've been following you guys for a long time.
You anyway, guys, who's you guys?
I'm sorry, this forum?
Oh, the Garvey Village.
Yes, yes.
Okay, because they burn guys on Guy Fawkes in November.
Yeah, sorry. I've been following you, my brothers and sisters. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant.
Just quickly, I saw what flashed. I'm coming a bit late, but I did see on my WhatsApp something about magistrates, and that quickly piqued my curiosity. So I said, let me jump in here really quick, because I've picked up the forms, I've filled out the application and stuff like that. And I'm also being asked to visit. Before I commit to becoming a magistrate, they asked that I visit three trials or something like that to make sure that I want to do this. Anyway, I think someone in here said that they were a magistrate, and I'm very much conflicted, and I need some help or advice. Now, I'm very much involved in the community with regards to stop and search. I'm very big on Section 60. My question is, and maybe someone can assist me, if I go ahead and apply to become a magistrate, which I want to, because I want to help in the community, and plus we are underrepresented in the magistrate system, does that or can that affect my drive in terms of the community about against police stopping, police brutality, etc., etc. So I'm kind of conflicted. I want to become a magistrate, but I don't know what it entails. Will I have to curtail or stop my community activity? So that's basically my question.
Not necessarily end time, but to save time, can I type my number in and then you give me a call, okay?
Yes, please.
I am active in the community first for me, I'm afraid. I am there to make sure that the poor souls that end up there, at least one of them get a chance.
Good. Okay, then that would be very helpful. If you could, please, that would be really helpful. Thank you very much.
I'm going to do that.
Okay. I read somewhere that Jesus must have done time, and look.
Oh, absolutely.
So I see myself on that same pathway. You know what I mean? But all I just need now is a fish.
Ken, you've been proven. You know, if you don't go through something, you don't know what you're going through to turn around and fight for it. So you have to go through something. If you look at everybody in the Bible, none of them were saints. They were all killers, thief, all sorts of things.
You're mute.
You muted yourself. You muted
sorry.
yourself.
So sorry. Don't apologize to anyone for anything that you've done in your life. It's your life. And especially when you're turning around and you're doing so much for others. Yeah, that's you know, that's life. We're there giving it to live it. Don't apologize to anyone. Yeah, and it's a fantastic, I'm sure, I'm jealous. And I'm not sure about the first bit, but what you're doing now, but I can't do what you're doing now unless I've been through what you've been before. So I can't come and take the sweet part and don't want to take the bitter.
The important part is I'm able to step to the man them on the block and step in and to stop the violence. And that's my whole thing. The whole thing about doing this was to be able to get the man them out all in harmony, so that they can look at where the real fight is the government, is the system, it's systemic racism that is the fabric of the UK system. Yes. So they're making it easier when they're turning each other, right? And then violate one another in our name. And I'm sorry to say, we on this platform need to step up and say, not in our name. Because we step up when the police do something to us, but when our next youth do something to our next youth, it seems like we're scared. We say, oh no, they can come to us. You don't know how much threats and things I get. You don't know how much some people come and hold me up and try to do things. But you know what? Who God bless, no man can curse. And I have to tell them, don't let me put back on my khaki pants. Right?
Sister J Africa.
Yeah, it was just one thing that highlighted for me in particular through that process that I watched Ken, because I was still on the sidelines doing the bits that he left me to do with the groups, is that the one thing that I would urge all of us to do on this platform are to develop systems that when we have disagreements with our leaders, if there was some way we can find intermediates, mentors, whatever the word is, diplomats to go between us, because this is one of the major problems we're having. Because as Ken said, and I'm glad he mentioned it, there were times that he was under physical threats of violence. And we found it very difficult because I didn't realize there was other community activists trying to go behind the scenes to negotiate. But we need our elders. There's something missing in our cultural development, where perhaps I've seen with my African friends, they have a system where when they don't agree, they can go to their elders and they step in. And I think this is something that we're lacking, and maybe somewhere on this forum we can find some way of doing that, so that people like Ken can get on with the job and we take the slack, because we can't do everything that Ken does and Ken can't do everything that we do. That's my urge.
Okay, one question. Thanks, June. One question from me, Ken, is that so you've done a march. What's next for the Million People March?
That was going to be my question. Go on.
Yeah, that is, you know, what it is it's personally, it's because of the experience that I built up from going through this process. Is to take it forward, is to build a stronger platform, to make it mean something. We've got the website, themillionpeoplemarch.com, right? And what it is, I'm looking to really do the march again next year, because I'm here to put my knee on those carnival organizers' neck, to make it uncomfortable for them, because it's for we carnival, not theirs, right? If we are there going to, because we have to have, because what I can't understand, I used to sit back and get dismayed that every year, just before the carnival takes place, the police will go and do raids and kick off some young men's door, right? And they'll arrest them, saying that they were planning to disrupt the carnival. But you know what? And they're doing it in the carnival name. How could that be possible year after year? And we sit down here and allow our young people to get criminalized. Let me tell you, they have invested £2.5 billion in the future prison, 20,000 spaces, in a public-private partnership. You hear that? Public-private partnership. Which private firm do you know that's going to put money into a loss-making venture, right? So they are setting our children up to escalate the madness so that they can give them more time. They've got something called a serious violence reduction order that they put out for consultation. That is so that they can take away some of the rights we have on stop and search. That just because you've got a criminal record doesn't mean they can keep coming and violating you. This will take that away. And we are sitting here saying, you know what? This is what we're not saying nothing, that we need to stand up and say enough is enough, not in our name, right? And somewhere, I don't know how it's going to be done, but watch out for that, because the consultation is going to happen. But if we don't put safeguard into it, it will become what we call another matrix, right? Where we've got 95% in Haringey on the matrix were black young men. Can't be right.
Yeah. No. What other work do you do in the community, Ken?
Well, as I said, I'm doing mentoring. We're doing mentoring those young men who are troubled, who go on, call it county line, who get caught up in the gang madness, get groomed. We even talk to the man them who send them out, who groomed them, because they've got transferable skill. But we have to let them know there's an alternative to what they're doing. Because I don't see victim and perpetrator. What I see is community. And that's what keeps me driving. So anything that's going to bring community together is what I do. What I find in this COVID period is that this is all now some of it's been behind closed doors, where the mothers, the youngsters are turning on the mothers, and holding them to ransom. You understand? Right? Having your youth come and tell you, mother, if you don't shut your mouth, I'm going to come there and slap in your face. What kind of madness is that? Where you telling me, an 80-year-old youth coming to me and tell me what? Pull a knife on me and telling me, look at you now, you're scared. But I said to him quite clearly, you're not always going to have that knife. And it's because I'm in your mother's yard, I have to show respect. But you try to bring that outside to me, it will bring a different response. You understand? And lo and behold, look what happened. A few weeks later, he gets stabbed. Yeah, because you can't go with that madness. We have to be able to step to the youth then, to let them know that you can't be wrong and strong, right? And people like myself will step to them. I do programs with Royston, Parents Together. I do things around Father to Father, which is about empowering our youngsters. And we do things around the Band of Brothers, which is about growing our young men emotional intelligence, to bring out the kingdom in a kingly space, so that they respect relationship and the role they have to play in that relationship. They can't be looking at a woman as a sex object. They've got to be looking at a woman as their queen and be stable, the stable of the family unit, and respect that. That's what we have to empower. I've also done a bit of acting with June, pattern up. That was beautiful.
Yeah, it was. So, I saw that.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, so it's a multitude. It's like, if I don't challenge myself, I'm not going to be challenged. Yes?
I think we got a question from Glenroy.
No, just I think Patricia's raising her hand physically, so I don't know if she wants to speak.
Okay, thank you. And also Josephine as well. I saw Josephine unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can I ask you, are these homes that these boys come from, are they mostly fatherless homes, or is the father there to, you know, communicate with them, tell them about life, etc., or is it the mother on her own bringing up these boys?
It's substantially mothers bringing up the child on their own, right? And the boys are feeling that they have to be the man of the house. But if they've got no framework to work from, then they don't know about the responsibility that goes with that, right? And I find that also some of the mothers, they're also, they've got this mother love, right? The unconditional love. Whereas if the father's even estranged, the father will have, you know, put boundaries. And sometimes if you don't have boundaries in there, that child is going to feel that he can step and be that the man of the house. Yeah. So he will be able to tell a mother who she can go, who she can bring in the house and who can't come in the house. Right. While he just smoke his weed, don't work, don't contribute to any financial things there, can't even repair nothing. You hear what I'm saying? So what kind of man are we growing?
Yeah.
I also got to mention Community Against Violence, because that's a platform that, as I said, with June, and that's a beautiful platform. And I do work around stop and search because I've become an expert on stop and search. Yeah, and through that, I'm able then to support young people who get violated by giving them good legal support, a legal framework. So when they win their case, we're then able to step and to sue the police. Because that's important, because this saying sorry isn't good enough. It's when they have to put their hand in the pocket and pay you money, then there's some kind of learning that they will get. And I think that's important.
Okay, I had my hand up earlier because I wanted to ask the question that Royston asked about what now after the million people?
Million people, not man, million people.
Yeah. So Royston asked that question, and Jean also asked the question as to the various other activities that you're involved with in the community. Initially, you said you was involved in stop and search, community mentoring, and you said something about a force. I'm not sure, working with the police. What was that?
The use of force, strategic oversight group. All that is because there was complaint. Do you remember Bianca Williams? Bianca Williams, the athlete who got stopped and searched with a 3-month-old baby, and they said, "Oh, we smell weed." But this athlete gets tested time and time again. Fortunately, it's only yesterday the 5 officers are now up on a charge. Rightfully so. Rightfully so. But we go through that every day of the week. Okay. So what the use of force is that when we see these videos that go viral around dodgy stops and search, and we're probably gonna get another one coming through because a young man died in suspicious circumstances on Thursday when he fell into the canal in Tottenham after being chased by the police. Okay, so that's going to be a big thing coming true. You know what I'm saying? So we can start challenging the police at that level, right? Royston's on the same platform, and as I said, he bring balance because they're used to a man like me step into them. Okay. But they're not used to a man like Royston backing me. You know what I'm saying? So with all positive people on there, it's a time that we can make a difference. Okay, and we need to make a difference because we can't criticize the Jews because the Jews sit on all the top tables. There's lockdown, and we should not criticize them because you know why? They might look after their own. It's about time we look on that to look after our own.
Can I follow up a question then, Ken? We had Sasha Johnson and Charles Gordon from the Taking the Initiative Party on the platform last week, And there was an interview done by Arise TV station. An interview was around one of the manifesto in the TTI party's manifesto about stop and search and some kind of so if, for instance, the police stop a young person and there's nothing found, that some action should be taken on part of the young person so that there's some payback.
Yes.
So they should sue them, in other words.
Yeah. So I was just wondering, I mean, I think that sounded good. And I think the TTI plus Black Lives Matter, it has actually raised the profile in the community, in the African community, around politics. And I just wondered if you have engaged at all with the TTI, you know, people involved in that. I know you was at the First of Messiah reparations march in Brixton, supporting with the security there. And I just wondered if you were getting involved in politically, getting involved with the TTI.
Well, look, I'm mentoring Sasha. Me and Sasha's a founder member of the Million People March along myself. She's
okay, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
She's a beautiful soul. Yeah. Okay, and she's very resilient. But as I said, she just needs some guidance from older wise heads to keep her on that platform. So as for politics, don't forget, I went in 2008. I tried to get in with the Labour Party, but the Labour Party in Enfield went and parachuted a white middle-class man in there. Nonetheless, I've managed to go on a platform. I know Glenn will probably slap me for this, but on the Tory party, right? But it was the first time in Edmonton that the Tory party had to man them with the blue rosette, going outside the Labour Party and holding them to ransom. You understand? But the whole point of doing that, when we had 8 young people, all black, murdered in a 6-month period in Enfield, how can we, and you've got people there who can make a difference. We can't make a difference if we don't sit at that decision-making table, right? So when we start talking about political party, so long as they're doing when you see what people want, they want you to toe the party line. The only people who toe any party line, them have to be sheep. I'm a leader. So I don't know what that look like, but if anybody want to take me, they might think I'm just too hot to handle. You know what I'm saying? And if they see my wine, geez, what they're gonna say there?
Ben, would you do some work with Manhood Academy, please?
I've done that. I've done with what's his name? Davis. I went and did stop and search with them. But as I say, like everybody else, they have got their own things going through. It's how can we better connect and keep our own autonomy in that regard? Because what we gotta also understand, we're not gonna agree on everything. Who in your family agree with everything that goes on? But it's how we deal with our differences that is our biggest fallout in the black community. I've got people in there that I admire, but to admire when a person keep violating me, what am I supposed to do? You understand?
Start off with, there's a lot, to me, there appears to be a lot of too many chiefs and no Indians. And
comment there.
You know, a lot of people want to be in the leadership role, but you also need a lot of people who are the Indians, who are doing the groundwork, who are communicating with Manhood Academy, setting up a scheme. So a lot of these young boys who don't have fathers have someone within the Manhood Academy that they can talk to, that they can emote to, that they can talk about their dreams and their ambitions, and then be able to call on others who can help them to clean up this swamp that you know, white people have created for us to continue to live in. Let's get out of that swamp. Let's not over interact with the police, because there's so much more so exciting in life that we should be doing.
Thank you.
The one thing I can say about Manhood Academy is that they took a number of people to Gambia. That's a start, because I find too often our boys don't even leave their postcode.
That is so true.
They need to go like a place. But the only thing I would do, I would take some of those youngsters and I would take them into the bush in that place.
Yeah.
And don't let them out till them have sense. And if they don't have sense, I put them deeper into the bush.
I hear that. Thank you so much. Somebody did ask about how to become a mentor, so we can make that the last question before we move on.
And Ken, take them into the prisons. That's what they need to see. That might wake them out.
Can I just quickly say, one of the things that we do is that we train through the courses, through Parents Together, through Stop and Search and Community Against Violence. One of the greatest things that we've done, we train the young people. We have 2 very young people in our group that teach their friends about Stop and Search and their rights. Because what to exemplify that, just today, my daughter is one of those, she saw an extremely hard stop. And I had to quickly report back to Ken, and we're going to try and follow that up with the young men, where they had at least 7 cars on 2 young men. And it was horrendous what I saw. I mean, and what was good, my daughter knew to stay at a safe distance. She observed, she recorded. Where she couldn't record, she took pictures, she took the license plates. And when the interaction finished, I managed to talk to the young men, and ask them, do they want some more support? They said yes. So that's what we can do. Get our young people, teach them, because they will be the ambassadors for the future. That's what Ken and I do in our groups.
You mentioned about going into the prison. I think it's more important, as Anne-Marie said, is going into the court, to the trials. Because let me tell you, because we have a team saying no snitching, no grass. But them boys, when you see what happened is, because I've been in a number of cases, murder cases, where the murderer has kept himself, as I pointed to another weak boy that he's grooming in the group to say it's him who killed the person. When he don't even take his own, he don't hold himself accountable or responsible for it. And the one who's been groomed, has kept silent and say no comment, no comment. And the first time he realized that his co-defender is grassed him up is when he's on the stand and hearing the man said, well, who did the murder? And they see the murderer point to the other boy in the dock. The other boy in the dock said, you know what? Well, you know what? I'm going to go and say my story now. But he don't realize the murderer has got a skilled barrister, and they will twist him up. So whatever you come and say, they'll say, oh yeah, you would say that, wouldn't you? You had opportunity, 3-4 times you got asked on different teams, questioning, and you never said nothing. So why should we believe you now? You know what happens in that case? The murder don't get off often, but he has company in jail with an innocent young man. That's what happened. So we have to show them there's no honor amongst thieves. Yes? So wake up and mind who you calling friend or family, because they can have other things on their agenda that use you as the prey.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You know, Ken, every year, ASDA...
Can we stop now? We can just keep going. We've got to move on. We've got another speaker, please.
Why can't we keep going on?
You'll have to come back to the African culture market and keep on then. I will call you.
Well,
you a call anyway, Ken.
I'm in service to my people. So that whatever that looks like. Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the works that you're doing, you and Sister June and Royston. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We need a lot more people like you in our community doing the works. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well done.
Okay. I did see there's one more question there, but if we have time at the end of the session, then we can get round to you, Mutulu. I think that is, I hope I pronounced your name right. We're going straight on, Royston.
Yes, because of time.
Okay, brilliant. Okay then. So we're going to move straight on to our next presentation, Brother Omawali, and he's going to talk about Garvey in England, and if I haven't got it written in front of me, but if I remember rightly, was it 1931 to 1935 to 1940? Because you did the beginning, so we're sort of like part way through. Am I right, Mawali? Can you hear me?
So I've just unmuted myself. Yes, what you say is absolutely correct.
Oh, good.
I would start with a little bit of drum, just to remind us of the African connection and all that we're doing.
I remember us to say, just keep on talking when you're drumming, because if you drum by itself, the microphone drowns it out, so we don't hear the drumming.
Right. Okay. Okay. So just a little bit of drumming, just to set the scene. And as you correctly pointed out, we're going to look at Marcus Garvey and his time in Britain. I mean, just as we're doing this, let me just say that this is the 4th in the Garvey Village series on Marcus Garvey. The first looked at the birth and the context surrounding the birth of Marcus Garvey. The second looked at the early years of Marcus Garvey, and by the early years we're talking about into his early 20s, just to give us a sense of the man. The third looked at Garvey in England. And as you correctly pointed out, Garvey had 4 stays in England. So in the third session, we looked at his stay in England from 1912 to 1914. We looked at his second stay in England, which was 1928. And what we hope to do in this session is to look at the third and fourth stays here in England, which were 1931 and from 1935 to 1940. And that will give us a sense, we hope, of Garvey and his time in Britain. So the name of Garvey was called in libation, and the drum will just revive Garvey again.
Oh.
Ashe.
Ashe.
And thank you so much for your libation at the beginning to set us off on the right path. That's really, really appreciated. Certainly appreciated by me, I'm sure by others as well.
Thank you.
Before going on to straight into 1931, I just want to quickly backtrack on the 1928 era. And just to say and remind, we did say it last time, but I think it's worth saying it again, that we know that in 1928, here in London, there was a Marcus Garvey Hall. And the Marcus Garvey Hall was created by the branch of the UNIA here in Britain. And the reason why I mention that again is to say that, you know, it's almost 100 years ago now that people operating genuinely as Garveyites successfully managed to get a hall, a physical space here in Britain. It was actually in East London. And I want to marry that with the Garvey Village project, because at the heart of the Garvey Village project is the idea of getting some kind of real estate, some kind of material base to build on. And I mentioned that again to just emphasize that the Garvey Village project operates in the genuine mode of what Garvey and the UNIA at that time was doing. We must understand the significance of the Garvey project, or the Garvey Village project, that it's not just a talking shop. It's beautiful that we have these occasions here where we can share ideas. This is a fantastic forum that you've created. But your project goes beyond that. You're building something material. And I would just make a suggestion. It's not my place, it's just a suggestion that I don't actually know exactly where that hall was. I haven't done the specific research to find out exactly where it was. I know it's in East London, and if I had to make a guess, I would imagine that that hall will have been in Tower Hamlets. And the reason why I say it was probably in Tower Hamlets is because this was the area of immigrants. That was the area where new people would be likely to come. So there's a good chance that that would have been the area that African people who came to Britain were drawn to at that time. Now, that hall probably doesn't exist anymore. Since the 1920s, there was a World War. And in World War II, there was a Blitz. And the Blitz obliterated large sections of East London. I'm in a house in East London right now. Next door to me, on this side of me, next door to me, the neighbor's house has a different appearance from the from the house that I'm in. And an elder spoke to me and explained to me why this was the case just within the last week. And the reason why the house next door to me looks different from the house that I'm in right now is because the original house next door to me was destroyed in the Blitz. In fact, the two houses beyond were destroyed in the Blitz. And so they had to rebuild and put new houses in the space where the bomb fell. So East London was devastated. And there's every chance that the hall, which was the Marcus Garvey Hall, was devastated, which would explain why we don't hear anything of it today. And I'm just suggesting that it's worth setting aside some resources to do that research, because we know that that hall was purchased somewhere between 1924 and 1928. And 2024 to 2028 is just down the road. And it would make complete sense for the Garvey Village project to commemorate that hall, not just as a commemoration, but to commemorate it with your own building, which by then will have been successfully achieved. So it's just a suggestion. And I just wanted to revisit that 1928, that aspect of 1928, just to put forward this notion as something that the committee might want to contemplate. But having said that, let's move on to 1931. So Garvey returns to London in 1931. In fact, he arrives in London in September of 1931, and this visit is only a 2-month visit. Now, those of you that have been following the series will be aware that when Garvey came to London, he didn't spend all of his time in London. He would have London as a base, and from his base, he would travel all around Europe and often beyond Europe as well. And so his 1931 visit was no different in that regard. And one of the central reasons for him coming to London, coming to England, was he intended to petition the League of Nations. So a part of his trip was to go to Geneva. And in Geneva, he would his mission was to have a meeting. And the meeting was with a man by the name of Peter Acker. Now, let me just explain the significance of that. The League of Nations, as was replaced by what today is called the United Nations. So the League of Nations existed up until the end of World War II, or just after the end of World War II. And in 1948, the United Nations came into existence. So when we talk about the League of Nations in Garvey's time, we're talking about the equivalent of the United Nations in this time. So when he went to meet the boss man of the League of Nations, it was the equivalent of him organizing a meeting today to go and meet what's the guy called Ban Ki-moon, yeah? Or a few years ago in the last decade, it was Kofi Annan. They're an African in that role in the last decade. So this was the level at which Garvey was seeking to influence. And when Garvey went and spoke to those people, now they mix up the races a little bit. In those days, it was only Europeans that were allowed to occupy those kinds of top jobs. Garvey was speaking to them about reparations. Now, he didn't call it reparations. We didn't have that. Well, we didn't use that language. The language did exist in that time because there were reparations that happened in that period. But we didn't use that language for our struggle. So Garvey was making representations about reparations, but he wasn't making representations on reparations around, I want this much money. Some people try to reduce it to money. We know it goes a bit deeper than that, but I won't go into that subject. Yeah. He had a very clear sense of what reparations was. And the kind of reparations that he was looking for was to get a part of Africa. So he went to see Peter Acker, to have a meeting with Peter Acker and to petition for Africans to have control of Namibia, for Africans to have control of what was then called Tanganyika, which today is called Tanzania, for Africans to have control of what today is the Cameroon. There's a war going on in the Cameroon at the moment. The Ambazonian people are fighting to separate themselves from the Cameroon. There's a history behind that. At the end of World War I, Germany was stripped of the Cameroon. And France and Britain stole what Germany had stolen from the Africans at the Berlin Conference. And they separated it. And it is the argument between French colonialism and British colonialism, which is at the heart of the Ambazonian struggle that's going on, the massacres of Ambazonian people, which is going on at the moment. If Garvey had had his way, all of that would have been knocked on its head from way back in the 1920s, when he started making presentations and started making representations. The other part of Africa that he was trying to get hold of was Togo, Togoland, next door to Ghana. That used to be a German colony also. So he was trying to get hold of any one of the former German colonies to use those as a landmass from which we could begin the process of rebuilding Africa. So when he came over, it wasn't for a holiday. He came with some grand plans, with some big ideas about how he was going to repair the African situation. So it's important to understand that when he came to England, it wasn't just to come to England, like coming to England is some big thing. It was part of a greater plan that he was involved in. I could spend more time on that, but I'm conscious that I've been overshooting. So let me look at another of the reason, or another aspect of his visit here in Britain. You see, many of us are not shown the internationalist character of Garvey. Garvey was a Pan-Africanist, of course, but Pan-Africanism is nationalism at one level, African nationalism at one level, and it's also internationalism at another level. So it's about us coming together as African people. But the internationalist aspect is making links with other oppressed people in the world. Garvey was a great fan of the Irish struggle and had direct relations with Sinn Féin, the political wing of the IRA. I mean, in truth, he had contact with the IRA, but to make it look good, he had, contact with the political wing of the IRA, Sinn Féin. When he came here to England in 1931, Garvey was invited to the Indian Club. So in those days, you've got to go back to the 1920s and 1930s. In those days, Africans and Asians in Britain worked together very closely. If you go back to the 1920s, there was an African by the name of John Archer, who was the mayor of Battersea. He was a member of the Labour Party at that time and became the first African to become a mayor in Britain, at least in recent history. Of course, we know we've had emperors and all the rest of it here, Septimus Severus and all those kinds of things, but that's another era of history. Yeah. So Garvey was, in a sense, tapping into those relationships. John Archer was very close with an Asian man who was a member of the Communist Party here in Britain. And they worked very, very closely together. And they were symbolic of the close working relationships. If you come to the build-up in the 1930s, as people were building up and preparing for what would become the 5th Pan-African Congress, you see that before the 5th Pan-African Congress, there were a number of African and Asian gatherings, congresses, meetings happening in Britain. So the atmosphere was very, very different at that time to what we experienced at this time. So, we were all fighting against the colonizers of our land. And so Garvey is invited to the Indian Club. I believe it was in northwest London. I'm not sure exactly, it may have been Kilburn in northwest London. And he speaks with great admiration for the Indians and the way that they represent themselves. He speaks with great admiration for Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi supported the UNIA. Garvey supported Mahatma Gandhi's liberation efforts. And so the UNIA would send messages of solidarity to the Indians to support the struggles of Indian people. The UNIA wrote to the Prime Minister here in Britain, supporting the Indian struggle. And his position was first India and then Africa. And he was talking about the liberation of India and then Africa. This is what Garvey was saying, to show us some of the internationalist connections that are not often spoken about in Garvey. And sometimes we don't fully understand the depth of the politics of Garvey because these aspects of Garvey are not presented. But in 1931, when he came over here, an example of that closeness came forward. I'll talk about the international aspects in more detail in another session because it needs further expanding and further explanation. But for now, I'm just going to identify the fact that that Garvey had a good working relationship with the Asian community. In fact, whilst I'm here, let me just say two more things. When Amy Jakes Garvey wrote volume 2 of Philosophies and Opinions, the Asians under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi wrote to her, complimenting her on the quality of that work. So this was how close their relationship actually was. They actually wrote to her and complimented her on the quality of that work. So for them to be able to compliment her on the quality of that work, that meant that they have to have read it. And they have to have agreed as an organization that it is a caliber of work that they are really pleased with. For them to then go down in writing and say, we admire the work that you have produced. That's one thing. I'll just throw another one in, although we look at these things in more detail another time. In 1928, and remember Garvey was here in 1928 for a while, for 4 or 5 months. In 1928, the editor of the Negro World, the newspaper of the UNIA, the biggest African publication anywhere in the world, the editor of that newspaper was one Hisheshwa Mudgal. Yes, Hisheshwa Mudgal was an Indian born in India, but living in Trinidad. And Garvey chose him to become the editor of the Negro World. Again, another example of the close working relationship that existed, certainly in those times, between African liberation organizations and Asian liberation organizations. And we can see how Malcolm X took up that mantle with the Bandung approach, where Malcolm X worked very closely with Asians, and African and Asians came together very strongly under Bandung. These are aspects of the history that we must revisit, because we have to ask ourselves the question, where did we go wrong? Because clearly that pattern is not the pattern that is being observed today. And we have to understand why those changes have taken place and interrogate what has caused, what are the real causes of the changes that have taken place. So I just mentioned those in passing. But to come back to it, so we've spoken a little about his trip to Geneva and the League of Nations. Another of the significant things was his invitation to speak at the Indian Club here in London, and some of the ramifications related to that. Another thing of importance in 1931, and of significant importance in 1931, was Garvey actually campaigned in the 1931 general election. This might sound amazing, but there was a general election going on in Britain at that time, and Garvey is on record as campaigning on behalf of, he didn't say the Labour Party, he said he was campaigning on behalf of his friends in the Labour Party. There's a difference. So he didn't say that he was campaigning for the Labour Party, but he said that he was campaigning on behalf of his friends in the Labour Party. Now, the Labour Party then was a very different beast to the institution or organization that exists now. I think I explained a little about that last time, so I won't go into that in any more depth at this stage, but there was great hope for the Labour Party at that point in history. There was this hope that the Labour Party would be on, working with the working people, would be struggling and fighting the same battle that African people are fighting in many respects. fighting the same enemy that African people are fighting. Of course, racism has blurred that, that line in a very complete way. So complete that the working classes are more inclined to align themselves with their own elite than they are to align themselves with the genuine and just liberation struggles of African people. But at that time, you know, it wasn't known. We've had history since then which shows us that they are betrayers of the liberation cause. But at that time, they had to be given the benefit of the doubt. And so Garvey was giving them the benefit of the doubt. And Garvey used to go to Hyde Park Corner, Speaker's Corner, I should say, in Hyde Park, and he used to make speeches to thousands upon thousands of Europeans in support of the Labour Party. The Labour Party actually won that election. Now, this had such a profound impact. Garvey was a very powerful figure. It had such a profound impact that in the island of Jamaica, where Garvey was born, rumors started to emerge that Garvey was going to become a Labour MP, that Labour were going to make him a member of Parliament. Well, of course, he didn't join the Labour Party. He was supporting his friends in the Labour Party, but the way that the news got mixed up when it went over the Atlantic and got back to Africa, people in Jamaica were convinced that that Marcus Garvey was going to become a member of the Labour Party. Now, I think those are the main points that I want to make in relation to 1931. I mean, there are other things that potentially we could talk about, but those are, I think, the main things to identify. He was only here for a two-month period. It wasn't a massive expanse of time. And I think we ought to give more time to the 1935 to 1940 period. So, so Garvey makes a decision that he is going to come and live in Britain in 1935. And it's not just a fun decision. He came here to work to rebuild the UNIA. He had had great success in building the UNIA in New York, in US Satan, in a metropolitan center. And he had now been excluded from US Satan. They had deported him and he couldn't go back. So he had the idea that he would come to England and he would try to repeat what he had done in US Satan. He would try to repeat what he had done here in Britain and rebuild the UNIA as a mass organization. So Garvey comes to Britain. He lives in West Kensington. The address that he lived at in West Kensington was number 2 Beaumont Crescent. That's where he actually lived. Many of us have gone to visit number 2 Beaumont Crescent. On the centenary of Marcus Garvey in 1987, the centenary of his birth, African people came together and commemorated Garvey and put a plaque on the house where he was, number 2 Beaumont Crescent. Racists came along, and what they did is they were very subtle. They put a drain pipe over the plaque so that you can't read properly that that's where Marcus Garvey was living. We know that that's the case because if you go and visit it now, you can still see it now. You step back, you'll see all of the drain pipes on the road are on the left-hand side of the house as you look at them. Garvey's plaque is on the right-hand side of the house, and that one drain pipe out of all of the drain pipes in the road, comes down right in front of Garvey's plaque. So somebody had strategically planned that they would cover Garvey's plaque with the downpipe yeah, of the guttering. But unperturbed, Africans of our generation, going back maybe about 10 years now, put a blue plaque up on the house on the other side. So they need 2 drain pipes now to cover the 2. They haven't yet worked out how to put the other drain pipe down. So there are now 2 plaques on the house. One, the blue plaque, which is visible. The other, the original black plaque, which the last time I saw it was still covered by the drains. Now that was where he lived, but that was also the head office of the UNIA. So number 2 Beaumont Crescent was actually the office of the UNIA. It was his working space. And of course, to save money, he lived in his working space. Now, that would change a few years later when his wife, Amy Jakes Garvey, that's his second wife, Amy Jakes Garvey, and the children would come over to England to join him. So this fast forwards us to 1938 now. And Amy Jakes Garvey brings the children, that's Marcus Jr. and Julius Garvey. She brings the children over to join Marcus Garvey. And the family home is around the corner from the office now at number 50 Kingthorpe Road, which is now a big main road. It's one of the A roads that goes through London. But there's a blue plaque on that house as well. So Garvey lived there with his family for a brief period. Now, there are different ways that you can interpret what I'm about to explain. But Amy Jakes Garvey brings the children over. Just to give you a sense of the ages of the children, this is in 1937-38. Marcus Jr. was born in 1930. Julius Garvey was born in 1933. So when it comes to 1938, you're talking about a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. These are that's the age range of the children when Amy Jakes Garvey comes to join with Marcus. She arrives with the children, and no sooner has she arrived and the family reunited, and then Garvey's off again. Remember, London is just a base for him. He's not tied to London, and even when his family comes, he's off. Yeah, this time. So this was 1937, and what he does in 1937 is he leaves here. Yes, he does his usual thing around Europe, but this time he goes to the Caribbean. Now, why does he go to the Caribbean? His wife has just come from the Caribbean, but he goes off to the Caribbean. He goes off to the Caribbean because what's happening in the Caribbean is there are lots of revolts happening. There are uprisings happening. There are what the enemy call riots happening as African people are rising up, demanding freedoms and demanding rights. And it's happening across the whole of the Caribbean. And so Garvey wants to be where the action is. So he leaves his family and he goes over to where the action is. He visits a number of the islands. He doesn't go to Jamaica, incidentally, but he goes down the chain of Leeward and Windward Islands, you know, visiting places like Dominica, St. Lucia, Barbados, and the various islands, Antigua, Grenada. He visits all of those islands down to Trinidad. And in some of the islands, he's not even, well, on one of the islands in particular, he's not even allowed to land, and that's Trinidad, because Trinidad was a real hot potato. Some of the most radical people in the UNIA, in fact, they used to regard Garvey as soft in Trinidad. They didn't think that he was radical enough. He had a lot of trouble with the Trinidad branch because they were that radical. Yeah, and the governor of Trinidad feared that if Garvey set foot on the island, that it would just turn into a bloodbath. And so the governor would not give him permission to land in Trinidad and left him on the boat at the shore. And then one of his friends, a European man, incidentally, by the name of Arthur Cipriani, that's his name, Arthur Cipriani, who was a captain in the British Army, of all things. Arthur Cipriani, as a European, is able to go to the governor, negotiate with the governor on Garvey's behalf, get an agreement that there'll be no violence, etc., come back and arrange for Garvey to be able to set foot on the island. And so his friend, Arthur Cipriani, creates a situation that allows him to actually be able to come onto the island and to make, I think, a couple of speeches whilst he's there. Now, after he visits the Caribbean, he goes off to Canada for the 8th International UNIA Convention. So he's making a big trip out of it. He's going around the Americas. He can't go to US Satan, so he holds the convention just the other side of the border, the Canadian side of the border, and people come from US Satan to actually participate in the UNIA convention that happens. But when he comes back to Britain after that convention, he finds that his wife and his children are gone. Now, in a sense, the fact is that they're gone. The speculation is, why did they go? Well, the official reason why they left was because the youngest son, Julius Garvey, he was getting a flu. They'd probably call it coronavirus now, but he was getting ill. His respiratory system couldn't cope with the coldness and dampness of England. And so the doctor recommended his return to Jamaica. And so this is, the official reason for the return. Unofficially, there could be speculation. I'll say could be speculation. I'll leave it at could be speculation that Amy Jakes was so frustrated. She had saved up. She had done what she needed to come over and be with her husband. And no sooner does she arrive than he goes off somewhere else. And so part of the speculation could be that in addition to the official reason, it could have been just this upset of, I've done all of this. I've come all the way here for you. And now you're gone. You're not even spending a little bit of time with us. And I mentioned this to show some of the contradictions between the political and the family aspects of being an organizer. And Garvey was very clear in that he put the political aspects first. Now, we can query whether we think that that's right or wrong, but the history shows that he put the political aspects first. Now, in 1935 to 1940, the biggest issue is an issue that I'm not going to talk about in this session. The biggest issue is the invasion of Ethiopia and the impact that that has on the relationship between Marcus Garvey and the Emperor Haile Selassie, or in broader terms, the relationship between the UNIA as an organization and the royal household of Ethiopia. I'm not going to speak on that subject today. Further down the line, the intention will be to have a specific session on that where we can look at that in a little bit more detail. We will not be able to do justice to that subject as part of this presentation. I think another thing that I can speak about here is to say that from his office in Beaumont Crescent, whilst he was here between 1935 to 1940, he was running The Black Man. The Black Man was the newspaper. Remember, the Negro World was the original world-beating African newspaper. But with the demise of the Negro World, another of the papers that he developed was called The Black Man. And he ran The Black Man in the latter part of its history. He ran The Black Man from number 2 Beaumont Crescent in West Kensington. It's important to understand this because there are some people who talk about the West Indian Gazette, which had Claudia Jones as the chief editor, Amy Ashwood Garvey, that's Garvey's first wife, as a member of the editorial board. There are many people who say that that was the first, they could say black newspaper, I would say African newspaper in Britain. That's not correct. It's certainly the first paper that we developed in what some people would regard as the Windrush era. But before the Windrush era, Garvey was here running the Black Man newspaper, an international newspaper, which sold not just in Britain, but also around the world. And before that, we'll remember that in 1912 to 1914, Garvey worked on another African newspaper, the African and Oriental Times, which was run by his mentor, Jus Muhammad Ali. So when people tell us, oh, this is the first African to do this and the first African to do that, what happens is when we look a little more closely at the history, we see these notions of first tend not to stand up too strongly. But just to mention that the Black Man newspaper was run from here in Britain during that 1935 to 40 period.
Brother,
but I think I should also mention.
Brother Malawi, what about a pause for a couple of questions before we close?
Let me just finish it off in the next 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
So let me just conclude. Yeah,
sure.
Okay. So just to bring this section to a close, I'm going to talk about Marcus Garvey died here in Britain. He died here in Britain on the 10th of June, 1940, after an illness which started 6 months earlier at the beginning of January. So he had a 6-month illness and crossed to meet the ancestors. He died, the official record, and I've actually got copies of the official record. He died on the 10th of June, 1940. He was buried on the 14th of June, 1940. He's buried, or he was buried, in a cemetery in northwest London. Now, there's a cemetery called Kensal Green Cemetery on the Harrow Road in northwest London. It borders onto Notting Hill Carnival. The back end of it comes to where Notting Hill Carnival is. Garvey was buried in there, in the catacombs. Let me just explain that that cemetery is actually two cemeteries. So Kensal Green is the name that most people know it as, but a part of the cemetery is reserved for Catholics, and it's called St. Mary's. And he was buried in the St. Mary's part of that cemetery. I've had occasion to visit there and to look at the records and to take copies, and I was being given copies of the records. Just to say very quickly, a quick chronology. Garvey was buried there from the 14th of June 1940 until the 6th of October 1964. On the 6th of October 1964, and that's significant because we're at the anniversary period now. Yeah, so we are in the, we're in the moment of the anniversary now. Garvey, his body is then brought over to the island of Jamaica where he was born. It arrives in Jamaica on the 10th of November 1964. The next day, his body is interned in Heroes Park, Jamaica. He's the first national hero of the island of Jamaica, and he's buried in Heroes Park on the 11th of November 1964. There's a lot more that I would have liked to have said and explained, but I think I'll stop there, to allow us time if we want to expand on any particular point. And I'm sure there are ways that we can look at other details in future sessions. So thank you for your attention, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much. Thank you, very insightful, all the information that is not readily available for us. So has anybody got any questions? It's so quiet out there. Nobody's unmuting.
No questions, Jean, but it was a wonderful thing on Mawali. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful and informative.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you.
Indeed,
so just in passing, you said that there was allyship between the Indians and the Africans people, and something went wrong along the way. Do you have any insight into what went wrong along the way and when that started?
Okay, you see, we're into the realm of speculation, and certainly for me, it would be speculation. And I believe that there's a divide and rule strategy which happens organized by our enemy against us. That divide and rule strategy is practiced within us as African people.
That's not speculation.
So I can see you've got a Grenadian flag behind you, for instance. Yeah, and we can see how they use the islands, yeah, against one another. Yeah, creating terms such as small island when all the islands are small. Yeah, we can see how these things were used to divide us, to make people who should be naturally together, fight against each other. So I believe it's easier to employ that strategy between Africans and Asians who are visibly different and who have different histories, different particular histories. They may have the same enemy, but they have different particular histories. And we also have to be real that all other people are anti-African racists. So Asians have a proven track record of anti-African racism. Now, so naturally we have a reaction to people who react in a racist manner towards us. And so that doesn't help the scenario either. Yeah. So there are many factors that help to create this divide. But the truth is, we are stronger when we are united, even with these, firstly within ourselves, but also we have a level of unity with other groups as well. This is intelligent politics.
Thank you.
And in part, our emotions have caused us to lose sight of intelligent politics.
True.
But this is, we must distinguish between the facts and the opinions. I've just expressed an opinion.
Okay.
Yeah. When it's a fact, I'll tell you it's a fact. That was just an opinion.
We've got a couple of people who's got their hands up or unmuted. So we've got Marlene, and we've got Anne-Marie and Josephine and Patricia. So Marlene, would you like to put forward your question?
Yes. You mentioned the Cameroon. I've got, knowledge of the Cameroon. What exactly were you saying about the Germans and the division? I know you said the division, and then the British and the French came in and took it over. How was Marcus Garvey trying to deal with that situation?
Okay, a very important question.
Amwali.
Yeah.
Very, very time conscious. Short responses, please. Yeah. And although the question may be long, although the question may be long, short responses.
Just cut me. Yeah.
Well, I just did. I just did.
In a nutshell, at the end of World War I, Germany was defeated and had to pay reparations. Germany had to pay reparations to the other European nations, to Britain, to France in particular. At the end of the war, they didn't have any money, but what they had were colonies. So what happened was the reparations was paid in African soil. And so the Cameroon belonged in colonial terms to Germany, along with Tanganyika, along with Namibia, along with Togo. And so those were taken away from Germany and in effect given to France and Britain, with a slightly different story for Namibia, but they were given to France and Britain as reparations. And Garvey now was saying that that should not be given to France and Britain. It should be given to African people. It's African soil. It belongs to us. That reparations ought to be coming to us. That was Garvey's case in a nutshell.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anne-Marie?
I really don't know if there's much time, but I was just going to add on about the longevity, and that the negativity, when we're used against each other, it's because of outside influence, and to say more about that. But we see the same thing like with Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, all of them. We see that. But with Marcus Garvey as well, his longevity is also recognizing the fact that Ghana adopted the colors in the flag, etc. Jamaica took back his body 20 years later, etc. So, but it's just this thing of when somebody's getting big and powerful, the Caucasians then become terrified, or the West becomes terrified, and they use our own, perhaps, to get at each other.
That's a statement. Okay.
Thank you.
It's a statement of fact. Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia?
I just wanted a bit of clarification, Omawali, about when Amy Jacks Garvey came to UK with the children. You said that they came in 1938, and Marcus Garvey went off to the Caribbean in 1937. And when he came...
I made an error. It was 1937.
Okay. They came
in 1937.
Yeah.
And then Garvey went on his tour, came back in 1938.
Okay. Okay, fine.
And when he came back, his family was no longer in the house.
Last one from Diane. I don't know if you unmuted for a question or if it was a mistake.
No, I wrote the question, but I wanted to know if Garvey visited any other parts of the Western African world. I know he was very close to Kwame Nkrumah. Did he visit any other parts of West Africa at all, apart from Ghana? Did he even visit Ghana? I don't know.
Garvey never set foot in Africa. He never had the opportunity to go to Garvey, and I've actually done some of this research myself.
Yes.
There is evidence of an F.W. Garvey and his wife, similar age to Garvey, who come via Nigeria and Ghana to England. But that's not Marcus Garvey. It's another guy, another person bearing the same surname. So Garvey never actually set foot in Africa. Clearly there were plans for him to go, but he never actually did it. And Garvey incidentally died at the age of 52, but the official documents show him to have died at the age of 53 because somebody did their maths wrong and got his age wrong. And that error, is worth pointing out, is something that people continue to make. If you look in, serious literature on Garvey, people say he died at the age of 53. That's incorrect. He died at the age of 52.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Omawale. And we will see you next month on the second Friday of November. Yes? Okay. All right.
Yes, I'll be delighted. I'll be delighted.
Yeah, and thank you very much to Anne-Marie Cousins for your very also insightful presentation about being a magistrate and a councillor. And big thank you also to Ken Hines for your works. Big thank you. And yes, we're going to see both of you back again, and definitely see Omawale again. Thank everybody for coming. A couple of announcements. I've got the Auntie Jean's African Culture Market next week, Sunday, the 18th of October, which is the Free Heavyweight Kings, which is the annual Free Heavyweight Kings with King Andrew Mohammed, King Robin Walker, and King Tony Warner. And it's a plus, so it's an all-dayer, and we've got some other poets and rappers and too many names to mention. Also next week, Friday, back here with the Garvey Village, Unlock the Chains and Keep Well. And next week, Saturday, also, we have Under the Mango Tree. And this week, Sunday, we have a showing of Melanie Subaz's film, The Path. Quickly, Sister Queen, have you got 30 seconds? No?
Yes, sorry. Sorry. Yeah, it's starts at 7 p.m. Please go online on Instagram if you're on Instagram, Sister M Queen. There must be a link. Auntie Gina sent the email out. Menelek will be showing his latest short film, and he will have Q&As. So it's from 7 p.m.
And that is this week Sunday.
This week Sunday.
Okay, thank you. Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Royston. Thank you, Patricia. And thank you for joining us, and looking forward to seeing you Sunday, and then next week Friday, and then next week Saturday, and next week Sunday. If you can't meet all of them, then meet us at one of them. Okay. Speak to you all soon. Sheda, I see Sheda, she's here. She's gonna be on the 18th as well. A brilliant poet. Brilliant. Anyway, thank you everyone. Thank you for joining us, and we shall see you soon.
Good night, everybody. Good night.
All right.
Thank you.
Peace.
Wonderful.
Okay.
I wanted to talk. Right. Say thank you.
Very informative.
Good night. Good night. Good night.
Good night, people. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Be well.
Good night, Umi. Good night.
Yeah,
good night.
Good night, everybody.
Presentation as per usual.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Fantastic evening.
Well, it's not
me.
It
was
it's
brilliant.
the presenters. It's the presenters. They made it.
Indeed.
Brilliant. Give thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. Nice. You're welcome.
Ashe.
Ashe.
Wonderful.
Brilliant.
Oh God, I forgot to save the chat.
Wow, nobody wants to go home in a hurry.
If you want to save the chat, the information in the chat, you can save the chat.
Yes, my sister, I've saved the chat. Give thanks,
Excellent.
Auntie Jean. Give thanks.
Excellent.
Blessed love to all. Good night.
And you too. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night, people.
Good night. Good night. Well, Mawali, excellent job. I'm gonna have to give you a call about tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so take care then, yeah?
All right, and you
Okay,
too.
bye.
See you then. Okay, bye.
Yeah, okay.
Catch you eating.
I am so sorry. The more I tried to get to join you properly, I had a phone call, an urgent phone
Always
call.
catch you at dinner time, no matter what time it is.
It's not even that. I'm talking about the call I had before this.
Okay.
Right? It wasn't good news actually.
Oh.
I got my sister in New York who's supposed to be looking after my mum. Who is, oh, they're still recording. Okay.
I was gonna say the talk after. I'll call you the talk after.
All right, bye everybody.
All
Good
right,
management.
good night. I'm locking off now.
Yeah.
Royston's locked off. The things I locked on. So Royston hasn't got the thing to lock off. I have.
Yeah.
But anyway, good night, everyone.
Go live.
See you night.